This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Well, Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to 2025 and our first edition of WST for the new year. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you, and right back at it tonight. Jets and Ducks at Canada Life Centre, kicking off the longest homestand of the year. 8 straight games at downtown Winnipeg, just in time for the deep freeze to come in. And welcome the rest of the NHL. Should be a fun one tonight. Connor Hellebuyck going for win number 300 in his illustrious NHL career and looking to build on his league-leading numbers, which should have him at the top of Hart Trophy consideration, in addition to a runaway favorite for the Vezina. We'll get to that. We'll hear from Adam Lowry coming up, a little bit of Scott Arniel later on today on the program. And looking forward to bringing in our old pal Dennis Bernstein. He was out in Chicago for the Winter Classic on New Year's Eve. Was back in L.A. for the Kings shutout of the Devils yesterday. Very weird schedule. Packed New Year's Eve. Only one game yesterday. No Winter Classic. That happened on New Year's Eve as well. And, with only college football, and I understand they're trying to stay away from the new expanded college football playoff. But obviously with that tragedy that happened in New Orleans and the, the Sugar Bowl getting pushed off to tonight, it was a pretty quiet sports night last night. Anyways, I'll ask Dennis Bernstein what's up with the NHL schedule. That was a weird one this week, but good news for us here in the Peg. Right back at it tonight. Jets lost a tough one in Colorado on New Year's Eve. Eric Comrie, poor guy, has absolutely no luck. I thought the Jets, listen, we knew that this was a very, very difficult spot for them, having played the night before in Winnipeg against Nashville, having to travel there, playing a rested and waiting Colorado Avalanche team. But to be honest, even though the shots were heavily favored, heavily tilted in the Avalanche favor, I actually thought the Jets, considering the situation, played quite well. The goals, the second and third goals that went in, there really was an element of bad luck. And unfortunately for Eric Comrie, he's had quite a bit of that. Not a lot of run support in his last few starts, and not a lot of good fortune. Cale Makar clearly taking the puck back in offside, no call on that. And then, of course, they got it cleared, and the next thing you know, it was in the back of the net. That was unfortunate. And then the goal that put them up, just a terrible time for Gabriel Velarde's stick to snap. He goes to get a new stick, and next thing you know, it's back in the net. But the Jets have had their fair good fortune so far this year. You wipe it off, you move on, you celebrate the new year, and now you get ready to start off 2025 in style, looking for win number 300 for Connor Hellebuyck tonight at Canada Life Centre. Also a big night tonight for our Canadian juniors. They didn't have a great New Year's Eve, losing to the U.S. They dropped a third in their pool and will play the Czechs tonight in a do-or-die game to move on to the semifinals. This, of course, was the round that Canada was bounced last year. A lot of pressure on the Canadian team that didn't practice yesterday, canceled their morning skate today. A lot of questions around this team as to what is going on right now. But you can change the narrative very quickly with a good performance and a win, knowing that there is no tomorrow if they do not get that done. We're also going to bring in the Hammer for his first visit of 2025. The holidays are over. We see BC made some announcements today, and former Bomber receiver coach Kevin Burgoyne will be going to BC with Buck Pierce. What does that mean for Winnipeg, and where are the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on moving into the new year with their questions. We'll also get to a little bit of best of 2024 and the big questions around our local teams going into 2025 later on the program. So buckle up. It's going to be a good one to get things going on this new year. Welcome to everybody in chat. Great to see you all. Happy New Year. And a shout out to all you podcast listeners that make WST part of your daily routine. Just before we bring in Reem, I do want to wish Happy New Year and a big thank you to all of our sponsors as we get into 2025. Of course, the great folks at Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Rollies Transfer, Manitoba Battery, fansfirst.ca, Canadian Club, Wallace & Wallace, the Winnipeg Jets, F Apparel, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and we'll get to a why not question of the day for the gang down at Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray as well. Michael Remis, Happy New Year. How are you?
Yes, Happy New Year 2025. Feels like we're in some futuristic movie. Getting strange.
Welcome to the future?
Yeah, stuff. Yeah, welcome to the future. Stuff that seems like yesterday now. It was actually 20 to 25 years ago. But pumped to be here. A bit of a strange day yesterday with the one hockey game on. That wasn't the Winter Classic, but hey, we're back. The Jets have a season-long 8-game homestand, and yeah, the last game just seemed like every start Eric Comrie has made lately. The Jets don't score a lot of goals, only 10 goals in Comrie's last 6 games, and the game is tight until late in the third period where the other team manages to pull away with the go-ahead goal. They tacked on a couple empty netters. It hit the parlay, right? 5-2? That's over 6.5. It hit the over. And then I think your other picks won, Minnesota and Edmonton. So
they did. We
hit the parlay.
We finished off on a winning note, and it was 3-2. The empty netter goes in, and shout out to Scott Arneal, still playing to win. Keep that goaltender out, and hey, if you're gonna get an empty netter, 4-2, 5-2, it doesn't matter. So that was if the Jets were gonna lose, do it in that fashion. Let us hit the over and cash the ticket and move on. I will put together a WST parlay, though, for tonight, focusing on the Jets. They're obviously a big favorite against the Anaheim Ducks. And tonight and moving forward, Remis, we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about Connor Hellebuyck, who continues to add to his already Hall of Fame-worthy career. This would be a big milestone to get. He's already got the 40 shutouts, now 300 wins. Less than 30 goaltenders in NHL history have done that in their NHL careers. And as we talked about last week, heading into the new year, it is certainly of the opinion here on WST that the man that is leading the NHL in goals against average, in save percentage, in wins, in shutouts, in minutes played, should absolutely be the favorite for the Hart Trophy. Now, I think that conversation is going to take a long time to sort of percolate around the league, but it is on us to I'm going to make a point of doing that to Dennis Bernstein when he joins us a little bit later on. And tell you what, some other interesting stories in and around the Jets, Reem, for all the talk about the about the blue line and the heat that Logan Stanley's taken. Big stands on a 3-game point streak right now. That I would imagine that has to be the first of his career.
Yes, it is.
But he is he's getting on the score sheet right now, playing with Neil Pionk. He will be with Pionk again tonight. Ville Heinola is going to be in with Colin Miller on that third pairing. And good news, Dylan DeMello, who left the Avalanche game after blocking a shot, looks like he'll be back on the right side with Josh Morrissey tonight.
Yeah, the defense, we've seen some shuffling. No Appleton and Hayden Fleury there out with injury. Toninato and Coughlin, healthy scratches. So we'll get a look. And yeah, big Stan, he had the breakout pass to Ehlers, did all the work and threw it to the front of the net. And Gabe Vilardi, where he's been making his money this season and due for a new contract, has 18 goals on the year for him. And yes, Jets big favorites tonight against the Ducks. Forward lines, I follow. He's in the Appleton spot. We got Gus centering, Barron and Kupari in the top 6. Been the same. So looking forward to tonight where we're going to see the first game of an 8-game homestand. And yeah, Hellebuyck, 300 wins. And 2024 was the year of Connor Hellebuck, because you look at stats among all goalies, he led every goalie in the calendar year. Wins, 44. Save percentage, .926. Shutouts, 9. And team wins. The Winnipeg Jets led all NHL teams in the calendar year 2024. What is the follow-up going to be? Because that was an incredible year. While you'd like to see a better playoff performance in the regular season, nobody won more games than the Winnipeg Jets in 2024, which is that's crazy.
It is. And you look at the team that won the President's Trophy last year. That's the New York Rangers. And as we go into 2025, the New York Rangers are 1 point out of the basement in the Eastern Conference right now. They are a train wreck is the best way that I can describe it. And it didn't matter that they got rid of Jacob Trouba and Capo Caco. They haven't started to win any games right now. So they're in a predicament right now. And the Jets, quite to the contrary, right there at the top of the standings, continuing to battle with Vegas for the top point percentage in the National Hockey League. Couple other things coming out of the game on Tuesday night, on New Year's Eve. Remo, on our show on Thursday, I spent a bit of time talking about how impressed I was with Morgan Barron's performance on against the Nashville Predators. He and that line, I thought, was as effective as it has been in a while. And you can tell that Barron is feeling it right now and playing with a lot of confidence. I mean, the way he created the space, used his size, used the power that he has to take that puck to the net and put it on Rasmus Kupari's stick for what basically amounted to a tap-in for his line mate. Exactly what the Winnipeg Jets are going to want from Morgan Barron. And, it has been a deep team. The scoring has been dominated by the top line. But I'll tell you what, I can't help but think when I watch that line, particularly where Barron is playing, or the way Barron is playing right now, he's got the feeling of a guy that'll can be really good in the regular season, but could potentially break out come playoff time. And back to your question about how you follow up 2024, I mean, there's one way for this team to follow it up, and that's to win some games in the playoffs, move out of that first round, battle to get to the Final Four. I think once they can get over the first hump, they'll be as dangerous as any team. But you just got to do that right now. And again, they continue to build on it. So I try not to focus too much on the playoffs right now because there's still so much runway. But to the Jets' credit, they put themselves in a position where they're all but assured of a playoff position, barring an incredible drop in the standings in the second half. So, whether it's putting the team together, whether it's additions, potential trade acquisitions, we'll be talking a lot about that. And I think most people in Jetland already have their sights set on April, but still a lot of work to be done with games like tonight and 2 points on the table.
Yeah, we're ramping up. It's 2025. Can we officially start counting down to the NHL trade deadline? When we look back at some of our top shows of 2024, the trade deadline and anything around rumors always seems to grab people's attention. And we've already seen a couple trades, none with the Winnipeg Jets. And when you look at the key dates for this season, I'm looking at the calendar, mark it down. It's a Friday, March 7, 2 p.m. Central is the official deadline. Will the Jets be looking to make moves? We know Cheveldayoff, when the team has a chance to win, he is certainly active, and I imagine they'll be looking to make some additions this year as well. So we flip the calendar, the playoff push is on. We're on to this homestand, the longest one of the year after the grueling, unfair schedule where they didn't sleep in their own bed for so many nights didn't play the game in a different city for like a month straight. And
hey, they're done that. Now it's time to make hay at home. I mean, listen, and every team, like with the Four Nations, is going to go through a period of time where they're like, oh my God, I cannot believe the schedule. I mean, the Jets had that through late November and early December. And listen, they'd started off 15-1. So anything less than that was going to seem like a bit of a step back, and obviously it was. But, this team through December, I think really steadied themselves. And, despite the loss on New Year's Eve again in Colorado, finds themselves in a great position coming in to 2025. And, we'll start it off talking about Connor Hellebuyck potentially getting win number 300 tonight. He has the opportunity after a star-studded career already to make 2025 the biggest of his career. A third Vezina trophy, potentially a Hart Trophy finalist, potentially a Hart Trophy winner. And then, more than anybody on the Winnipeg Jets, has the potential to be the difference maker come playoff time. And that I know would make Connor Hellebuyck very happy, and certainly fans of the Winnipeg Jets. Listen, just before we get to Adam Lowry, Remo, quickly, I'm going to put this why not question of the day right out to everyone, and I'll put it to you as well. Why not question of the day for not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray? How is everybody feeling about our chances at the World Juniors? After the loss to the U.S. on New Year's Eve, Canada finished third in the pool, which is where you didn't want to be. You had to play one of the top teams in the other pool. It came down to Sweden and the Czechs. It will be Canada versus Czechia. Canada, on the books, is a favorite. A lot of that kind of seems on reputation because, man, this team just has not scored any goals so far. And listen, they sort of got their noses rubbed in it by their arch rivals, the Americans. I'm very intrigued what we get out of Canada tonight. And I do wonder just how nervous people are that this could be a second straight year of finishing outside of the top four, which would be a huge disappointment for a team hosting the event on home ice.
Was the penalties last game, Huss? Player discipline.
No discipline at all.
Just seemed like a constant parade to the penalty box. And, it's easy to blame officiating, but some of those at the end, it's like, yeah, guy got an elbow up in a U.S. player's head. So they're making it easy. I don't know if the Canada lost their cool. They're getting flustered. I don't want to say crumbling, but, the pressure certainly getting to them. It's staying out of the box should be easy for all these players, but it was over and over and over again, and U.S. Made him pay. A great shot by Yzerman to put U.S. ahead and kind of, I don't want to say seal it, but, that was the go-ahead goal for them. Scoring a 5-on-5 been an issue, and a lot of questions that's going to be asked about Team Canada, about personnel, about deployment. And I can't remember, coaching, I can't remember a time where you have this kind of questions by so many people outside of the organization, Hockey Canada, saying, what's going on here? Things could have been done differently. So certainly a big game. We did put out a poll. Who will win tonight? Oh, I put USA. I meant to write Czechia. I got to redo the poll here. Wait, watch for the poll for Canada. I'm thinking of New Year's Eve. But it was, kind of nice flipping back and forth us between the Canada game and the Jets game. Or if you had one on a tablet, one on the TV. It was a nice New Year's Eve for sports viewing, that's for sure. Winter Classic as well. I did have that on at the party we were at.
Well, the one thing, I went out and met my crew to watch the games, and we had the Jets on one, we had Canada, USA on the other. Unfortunately, the teams everyone was cheering for lost both of them. So it was an underwhelming finish when it came to results. But as you mentioned, those two empty netters were nice for other reasons. So anyways, vote in the chat right now, Canada, Czechia. For those wondering, I just finished up the lock shop with Jake Bull and Moss, and the odds for tonight's game, Canada minus 333 favorite.
Wow.
Czechia plus 255. And listen, Remis, I wouldn't take this game should be a pick'em, if that, and that might be generous to Canada, based on what we've seen so far in this tournament. But the fact of the matter is that if it's all Canadians betting on this game, they're going to be back in their home team, and they've got the history, the resume as Canada at the World Juniors that they should win. But based on what we've seen so far, so listen, if you can stomach fading yourself, jump on that plus 255. I think the way to get in on this one tonight is Czechia plus 1.5 at plus 111, which would mean Canada could win by 1 and move on, and we still cash the bet at better than plus money. That would be sort of the emotional hedge, if you will, and you could potentially middle it between Canada being knocked out and still cashing a ticket. We'll talk about that more a little bit later on in the Coolbet lines.
Just quickly on that, Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects tweeted out us. He's at a dinner table last night with some smart hockey minds. They went around the table picking the winner. 4 votes Czechia, 2 votes Canada, and he's voted for Canada, but not the most confident. Look, I got my passport here, still at the table. Will they revoke it if I bet on Czechia plus 255? Because that's some Val right there, based on what we've seen from Canada. Although 70% of our chatters, hovering between a very nice 69% and 70%, think Canada will win tonight.
One thing that I wouldn't be doing is thinking that Canada, after basically scoring one goal against the States, 1 against Latvia, they ended up getting an empty netter against the Germans. So I guess they scored 2 in that game and 4 in the early game. I mean, they just haven't scored very many goals. I was looking for the top Canadian scorer, so I went on to the top scorers from the tournament. There's no Canadians in the top 30. They just have not scored very many goals, and they're going to need to do it against a very talented Czechia team and a lot on the shoulders of George, the young goaltender for Canada, in tonight's World Junior. That's 6:30 tonight from Ottawa. From Ottawa. Other games today in the tourney coming up just in a few minutes. They'll drop the puck between the Swiss and the USA. And then at 4 p.m., Slovakia and Finland. Sweden and Latvia are underway right now. And wow, how about Latvia? What a great story they've been at this tournament. It's 3-2 right now. It's very much a game with 7 minutes left in the third period. So we'll stay on top of that and let you know what's happening. Earlier today, there was the relegation game, and the Germans narrowly escaped being out of the tournament. They beat Kazakhstan 4-3. Impressive result, though, for Kazakhstan, despite being relegated and not being part of the World Junior party next year. All right, listen, Dennis Bernstein's going to join us in a few minutes. But let's hear from the captain, Adam Lowry. He's looking forward to kicking off 2025 and hopefully getting Connor Hellebuck's 300th win. Here's Lowry on just what they learned from the last game back finishing up 2024 in Denver.
Oh, no, last game against the Ducks.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, yeah, that was, of course, the where their lead evaporated in that final few minutes of the game and a win turned into a regulation loss. Here's Lowry on that last meeting against the Ducks.
I think there's things we can take from that game systematically, and how they scored some of their goals, and use that going into tonight's game. I think it's more about focusing on what we can do, limiting how they create their chances, not allowing them to get sticks on pucks, coming from the points and things like that. I think in Anaheim, we did some things that we didn't love. We didn't really get to our forecheck. We didn't get to our zone time. But, at the same time, we put ourselves in a position to have a chance to win that game. Ultimately, just a couple mistakes, and that was the difference. So, kind of look at the last couple of games this morning, and then we'll look at, probably some review from that Anaheim game and some other things that we can do to hopefully have success against them. We know they're playing well coming into this game. They've got a couple big wins against some really good teams. So, they're a team we're definitely going to have to be ready for.
All right, there's Captain Adam Lowry on tonight's opponent, the Ducks. This is starting 8 straight at home. They won't be on that plane for a while. Here's Adam Lowry on this big upcoming homestand downtown.
It's important you don't get too far ahead of yourself, and obviously, you use this stretch without having to travel. We're going to get some more practice time. We're going to be able to iron some things out and work on some things and just continue trying to get better. I think that's been our mindset all year, is how do we improve each day so that, come the end of the regular season, we're ready to go. And how can we keep pushing for more? How can we keep trying to improve? And sometimes on the road you miss those opportunities after just getting in late. Optional skates, you don't really get the full team out there to work on systems, power play, penalty kill, to stay sharp. So you want to play well at home. We want to play well in front of our fans, but you can't go win all 8 in one game. So just focus on this first one, and then after that move on to the next one, and just try and get better every day.
All right, there's the captain, Adam Lowry, on this upcoming homestand. Now tonight, as we mentioned, Connor Hellebuyck 1 win away from win number 300 for the Winnipeg Jets in the NHL. Mike McIntyre asked Lowry about Helly approaching this big milestone for their goaltender.
Players are well aware that Connor Hellebuyck is on the cusp of a pretty special milestone and joining a pretty exclusive club.
Yeah, he lets us know every day. No, I'm kidding. But no, I think we're all aware of it. You look at the body of work and his career and what he's done since he's come into the league. He's, I'd say one of the best goalies, of our generation. Is, over his 10 years in the league, and it's kind of one of those things where he continually seems to wow you. He continually gets better, and you think the numbers from the previous years are unbelievable, and he has a start like he's had this year. So we're really happy and really lucky to be a part of it, and he's a huge part of our team. He's a huge reason why we're where we're at, and hopefully we can get that milestone sooner rather than later.
A little bit more on Hellebuyck from the captain. He was asked if Helly's actually better than he was last season.
I mean, he's certainly playing like that, and he played unbelievable last year. So I think sometimes his biggest downfall is he makes it look really easy out there. He's so good at reading the play. He makes real difficult saves look routine, and he's always trying to find ways to get better. He's always analyzing his game and seeing things that he can work on, and he's a special player. And so far it's been a fantastic start for him. And like I said, he's a huge reason why we're where we're at right now. And we're going to try and continue playing hard in front of him to, hopefully keep those numbers where they're at.
All right, so there's the captain, Adam Lowry. Now, one more from Lowry. This is game 40 for the Winnipeg Jets tonight. The Ducks are here on Saturday. That will be game 41, the official midway point of the schedule. Lowry just talked about looking ahead to the second half of the regular season in 2025.
Just the practice time, and like you said, the play seems to ramp up the urgency. The jockeying for seeding, kind of, you get to the halfway point, and teams really start realizing how critical the games are down the stretch. You want to put yourself in a good position heading into the trade deadline, and I think just being at home, being able to practice, being able to work on things, from the night before, kind of make sure those bad habits don't creep into your game. Sometimes when you go from game to game, it's hard to, nip those things in the bud. So I think more from just a continually getting better developmental stage, it's going to be critical for our team.
Do you think about what it could do for you in the standings too?
No, not too much in that sense. Like I said, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. You can't win all 8 games in one night. So, regardless if you play 3 at home, then you have to go out on the road. I think it's more, how we can get ready for teams, how we can, work, and you get in the gym. Hopefully it's not as taxing on the body with less travel, and you're in your own bed every night and you get in a routine. So, I think you want to take advantage of that, but you start looking and trying to count the wins. You kind of make the task more daunting than it should be.
All right, there's the captain, Adam Lowry. We'll hear from Coach Arneal a little bit later on today. Dennis Bernstein coming up in just a minute. Listen, World Junior tonight, we mentioned Canada, do or die against Czechia. You have 3 days to get your tickets for the final ultimate 50-50 draw for the World Junior. The third draw date will be January 5th, 2025, coinciding with the gold medal game. What you're going to want to do is go to hockeymanitoba.myshopify.com. Grab your tickets. You can go single bullet, one ticket, all the way up to 999 tickets for a big value buy. And the bottom line is this draw will be done within our province. So the winner in Manitoba will keep the winner's money in Manitoba, and the other 50% will go to grassroots hockey initiatives to help grow the game here in the province. Again, hockeymanitoba.myshopify.com. Get your tickets today for that final draw on January 5th. Hey, a big happy new year to our friends at Rolly's Transfer. Folks, if 2025 sees you and your family on the move, well, get the white glove treatment from the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba, family owned and operated for over 60 years right here in the Peg, Rolly's Transfer. With their extensive logistics business, they're all over Winnipeg and southern Manitoba every single day, which means flexible routes, flexible timing, and great rates for you on that next move. What you're going to want to do is head on over to their website at rollys.com. Top right corner, you'll see the request an estimate feature. Click on that. Let them know when and where you're moving and what needs to be moved. And don't forget to put WST in the promo code for a special discount on the moving services and moving supplies from our friends at Rolly's. And their friendly staff will turn it around quick, get you a great rate, and then get you set up to take as much of the stress out of the move as possible when you're on to your next destination. Moving in 2025, call Rolly's, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba, family owned for over 60 years. Check them out today. Request a quote at rollys.com. Well, we knew it was coming, folks, and I don't want to be a buzzkill here, but if you check out the extended forecast, this polar vortex is coming. Now, the good news is it's not just us. Most of the Midwest of the USA is going to get killed as well. But listen, we've been here. We've done that. What you need to do is be prepared for the teeth of the Winnipeg winter, and Manitoba Batteries got you covered with batteries for your car, for your truck, booster amps if you need, booster cables, of course. It is all there at the best prices in town, period, bar none. And listen, if that car won't start, you need to get some work. They've also got the best service in town because they'll deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. Check them out online at manitobabattery.com for all of your needs. You can pop down to Logan Avenue or Dovercourt Drive, either of their two locations, or just give them a call and they'll deliver it to you. Best prices, best service in town for all your battery needs. Make it Manitoba Battery. And hey, we are into the new year. I know many of you have some New Year's resolutions, planning on doing things differently, or just better this year. And if part of doing things better is looking better, new year, new you, new wardrobe, get on down to F Apparel, the #1 spot for custom men's clothing in town, with custom suits beginning at just $400. You'll never look better than with a custom outfit from F Apparel, whether it be suits, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, chinos, golf pants. They have it all, and the biggest and best selection of menswear accessories in town as well. Pop by and see them, 190 Smith Street downtown, or check them out online at EPHapparel.com for everything they've got going on, and you can make an appointment online to come in for a fitting as well. Up your menswear game in 2025 with Winnipeg's #1 spot for men's custom clothing, F Apparel at 190 Smith Street, and online at fapparel.com. All right, Jeff Hamilton coming up a little later on today, but right now let's talk some puck. Fresh off his visit to the Winter Classic, Dennis Bernstein of the Fourth Period joins us now. Dennis, Happy New Year. How are you, my man?
Everything's great. Great to talk to you. One of my first appearances of 2025. Happy and healthy for everybody that listens to WST, and just happy to talk some more puck with you as the season continues.
It's all downhill from here, Dennis. It's all downhill from here.
But they keep telling me. I don't believe it, but they keep telling me that.
Hey, you were out in the Windy City on the weekend for the Winter Classic. How How was Chicago and how was the annual event that, I'll be honest, I don't think has ever been more under the radar than it was this year?
Yeah, well, they switched days now. It's New Year's Eve, which is probably the proper thing to do as opposed to what's going on with college football here in the States. Here's the thing. I love Chicago. Lived there way back in the day for 6 months. Gained 20 pounds because the food was amazing. The bartenders are awesome, right? The event is great. And I just said this to you off mic. To play the Winter Classic at Wrigley Field, because it's a smaller ballpark, is perfect because the rink fits so well. It's like it's not a big ballpark, so basically you have the third base dugout, a little bit of space, and then the rink, and a little bit of space on the first base, and then the stands. So from a contextual standpoint, from an execution standpoint, 38,000 people sold out. A ton of people from St. Louis. Like that to me was really surprising. But Hustler, that's a really bad home team. That's like. Taylor Hall was almost in tears after the game because they played so poorly. And Foligno said, we're really disappointed for the fans. It's not acceptable. You watch Connor Bedard after every loss, it gets worse and worse. His body language and his facial expressions and what he says. So if you're a Blackhawks fan, you're probably happy you went for the event and certainly not for the result. But it was a great time. The weather held out a little bit. It wasn't that viciously cold. So, I can't wait for next year when they supposedly do the Winter Classic in Miami. I think it'll be a little bit warmer. So, but it's always a fun time. Chicago's great, and the event was great.
Is that
But you're right. The game was awful. Yeah.
They're going to move.
I think so. They're talking about doing it maybe at Harvard, where the Dolphins play. Maybe they could do it at Marlins Park too, Lone Depot Park. But there's some talk about that because I go back to 2012, and I remember when Bettman came to town in Los Angeles. I said, "Hey, could you ever play an outdoor game or Winter Classic in LA?" And he goes, "Well, the ice conditions with the weather." 2 years later, they had that stadium series. So yeah, I think they'll do that. Plus, like you talk about the matchup, you're right. That was a terrible matchup. I felt bad for TNT almost because they had the Blues and Blackhawks. But if you had at Dolphin Stadium, if you had the Lightning and the Panthers, that's a huge. You'd sell out the park without question.
That'd be a big deal.
That'd be a big deal. That'd be so much fun. And remember, go back to a couple seasons ago when we had the All-Star game in Fort Lauderdale at Sunrise. That was a lot of fun, a lot of different optics and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think they'll do that because now they know how to make it. It's a science now. It's not even an art anymore to do these games for the NHL. I think there was a 40-second outdoor game. So it's a question of, what's the venue right and stuff like that. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I look forward because, as you're right, people have said one thing. That's the second time they went to Wrigley. And granted, it was 15 years ago, and it's very, very different. They got to reinvent it a little bit. So, I know Gary doesn't really like doing stadium series games at indoor stadiums. Look, here, I'll give you an example, Hustler. I think it would be a huge event if the Kings and Golden Knights played back-to-back at SoFi and Allegiant. I think that would be huge. I think they'd sell 120,000 tickets, and it'd be huge. But they just like the outdoor stadium feel of it. But every time I've gone, I've had a great time. And if you're out of market and you don't like the game or whatever, I get it. It's for the people in Chicago and a little less for St. Louis.
Just thinking about those indoor stadiums. I mean, I was just at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis for an NFL game a few weeks ago. And I mean, to think about the amount of Manitobans and Winnipeggers that would travel the 7 hours.
Are you kidding?
For a Jets Wild game in a venue like that. It actually
100%
would be incredible. Yeah. Back to the Blackhawks for a minute, though, because you mentioned just how down everyone involved in that operation seems. I mean, it was 2 years ago, they had the incredible tank. They get Connor Bedard. Yeah. They make some big moves, really cutting it down to the ground to move up. How much pressure is Kyle Davidson on right now to get this thing moving forward? Because you're at the danger right now of another completely lost season, which I think it is already.
Right.
But there's some real negative aspects, especially with the talented young guy that's supposed to be the future, not just of your franchise, but one of the guys that's bringing hockey forward to be in the dumps like he is. It's amazing just how bad they are, considering the expectations that, with Bedard, they would have moved it a heck of a lot further along than they are right now.
And Kyle Davidson fired the coach that he probably shouldn't have fired. I think Luke Richardson next season could be coaching somewhere else in the NHL, so I didn't understand that move. But now it starts the clock on Davidson, right? I think that's it. I think that's why, and it's an entirely different situation. I think that's what you see in New York with Chris Drury. If he turfs Lavi, then the clock starts on him. So, yeah, the clock's ticking. You want Bedard being happy. because you always still have to look at the next contract. But the amount, it's funny. San Jose is worse than Chicago, but it looks like the guys they got surrounded, Celebrini and to a lesser extent Smith, work better than the guys that they got. Because on paper, the guys they got on paper, Teravainen should have been really, really good. Bertuzzi is a hustler around the neck. Taylor Hall, look, he's not his MVP guy, and he's far from it anymore. But there was enough quality that you thought added to this team that would not make this team so bad. And yet they started okay, and then they really fell off a cliff. It's just the grouping of players that he put together hasn't worked. Not unlike, what's going on in Detroit with Stevie Yzerman. He better hope that Todd McClellan can come in and do the job, because that looks like a poorly assembled grouping of players. And same thing with this. It doesn't look like they have the right – I get it. They needed to get veteran support for Bedard. They didn't get the right veteran support. It's as simple as that. And I could second guess, maybe you should have got another player, maybe traded for like Vetrano from Anaheim as opposed to Teravainen. It hasn't worked, Hustler. Sometimes that happens. So maybe another mix of players next offseason will help. But the clock's definitely ticking in Chicago, because you have supposedly a generational talent in Chicago, and you want to start building around them. They haven't done that so far.
Dennis, I know you were speaking with many of your colleagues from around the league at the Winter Classic. You mentioned the Rangers. As we go into 2025, the New York Rangers are 1 point ahead of the Buffalo Sabres to stay out of the basement of the Eastern Conference. They've lost 4 in a row. They've won twice in their last 10. Where does this go from here? And can this season be salvaged on Broadway?
The names on the back of the jerseys, it should be able to. But now Shesterkin's on IR. Like, Chris Kreider refuses to go to the net, and that's Chris Kreider's like, what's going on there? Zibanejad looks defeated. We've reported fourth period that he might be open to waive his NMC for certain spots that he might like. I don't know. Hustle, here's the thing, and I said this to some people over the weekend or at Winter Classic. It's not like this team started like 7-5 or 6-7. Like, they were 11-4-1. And they literally fell out of the sky. And from everybody you talk to, entitlement, soft, no heart. Like, that's what you hear. It's like, and what I don't get, look, I get it. They're glue guys. Like, Gaudreau's won, he won a couple of cups in Tampa. He played in New York for 3 years. He's a quality guy. Trouba was your captain. And then, and then Kakko speaks up and he goes, right? But these were, like, when Barclay Goodrow got waived, he was a fourth-line player. When they traded Trouba, I get it, he's the captain, but he's a third-pair defenseman. Kakko was a third-line right wing. You didn't trade a core player. You shouldn't be that upset. You should be a professional, go out there and play hard. It's certainly as good as Washington's been, this has usurped the number one story right now because of the expectation. Hey, I'll be totally transparent, Hustler. I picked them to win the Cup, the Rangers. How bad do I look? Like, it's embarrassing, and the efforts don't get any better. When I knew they were in trouble, Hustler, there was a 2-game stretch. They went out to play Nashville and St. Louis. Neither one was playing well at the time. I think they scored 2 goals in 2 games. I'm like, okay, there's something going on. I just think this team is frail. I think they're used to getting their way, and they're spoiled, and when they don't and things go the wrong way, the team goes south. Like, it's a total collapse, and it lays at the feet of, at Chris Drury. Like, he held on to this team. He made one move in the offseason. Riley Smith, who has lately not played bad, but it's stunning the way this team has fallen, and I don't see him turning around. Look, I get it. They could go on a run, get hot. I just don't think it's in their hearts right now. I think that they need an attitude adjustment. And if I see better on the ice, not from a result standpoint, but from a try standpoint, where like, oh, that was a solid 60 minutes. Like the Florida game, they played well in that game. They were good. They came from behind. They were down 3-1. They rallied. But there's a long hill to climb here. The one thing is that there is such parity in the league. Could they sneak in as an 8 seed? Yeah, I wouldn't be totally shocked. But things have to change pretty drastically in New York for that to happen.
One of the things that you guys in the fourth period do so well is, communicate with people, not just executives, but also agents. And just on Chris Drury, as he goes into this new year, we all remember what happened with Barclay Goodrow in the offseason. Mm-hmm. The Jacob Trouba business, he was the captain of the team. It was incredibly public, threatened to go on waivers. Right. It seemed like there were some folks that, and probably some other players, that kind of resented the way that these guys were being treated. How does this affect them doing business moving forward? Like, will there be, everyone's always wanted to play in New York. Does that change considering the way they've treated some important players over the last few years?
Well, to your point about everyone wanted to play in New York, Panarin only wanted to play one place, right? He was only going to play at Madison Square Garden. So
same with Trouba.
Yeah, the money didn't matter. right? Monday didn't. Well, it matters. Like that, it's like the Eagles. We always talk about doing the reunion tour. It's like, they say it's amount, but the money doesn't matter. It always matters, right? So that there's that. But here's what I would say, Hustler. If there was no salary cap in this league, you can go anywhere you want, fine. But there is a salary cap. So, like, if you don't necessarily want to play in New York, but you get traded there, like, you don't have a lot of options, right? So I don't think it scares people off because I think that when you win in New York, there's nothing like winning in New York. And it's been a minute now. And it's been 1994. It's not 1940 anymore, but it's 1994. I don't think it scares anybody off because there are people, for all the players that may not play in a major market, there are a lot that do. Like Patrick Laine wanted to go to Montreal, right? And has done very, very well in a short, period of time there. So I don't think it scares anybody off. I think if you're a player, like from a free agent standpoint, I think if you get traded there right now in this climate, like if you were involved in a Mika Zibanejad trade going back to New York, you might look around the room and say, wow, this isn't so great right now. But I don't think it scares anybody off because it's still New York. There's still a salary cap. There's limitations to how people move around. So I don't think that. But, the atmosphere and climate has to get better, Hustler. As crazy as it sounds for a place like, Madison Square Garden in New York City.
No doubt about it. Of course, you saw the Kings with an impressive shutout yesterday. I know you mentioned that it maybe makes more sense to have the Winter Classic on the 31st, but what was up with the schedule yesterday? Are they that afraid of the college football playoff games that you have one singular game on New Year's Day?
Yeah,
and that was the day up here that the World Juniors wasn't playing at all. I mean, it was wide open in Canada.
Right, one game not nationally televised that started at 3 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah.
I don't know. To answer your question, and I also ask you, the scheduling in this league is really funny because the Kings have about like 20 different start times this year for their home games. Like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4:30. It's crazy. And I asked them, like, is there something is there a reason or meaning towards this? Is there an end game to this? They go, we'd love to tell you a great story, but we just picked these times out randomly, and we're going to see which ones fit best for our fans, and then we'll go down that lane. So one game at 3 p.m. Pacific that wasn't nationally televised, Hustler, I don't have any clue with respect to that. And I think, of course it is. You're shying away from all the other activities in there. Could you redo the Winter Classic on a New Year's Day? I think the college football playoff, if it's going to be played on the here in the States, it's going to, because remember, it's not a Canadian thing, it's a U.S. thing. I think it would take away a lot of viewers. But if you had a compelling matchup, like Connor McDavid versus Sidney Crosby, maybe it would work. But I think overall, they're thrilled with ESPN. They're thrilled with TNT. It gets dicey because this is valuable property, like New Year's Day, with respect to U.S. TV markets. So I think that's why they shied away. But that's unusual that only game is a standalone game on a Wednesday during the week.
That being said, we're back at it tonight, and one of those games includes one of the teams in your neck of the woods, the Anaheim Ducks, coming into Winnipeg. And we saw the Ducks kind of shock Winnipeg with 2 late goals for a regulation win a couple weeks ago when the team was down in California. They're not quite the Blackhawks. They seem to be moving forward. I mean, especially with what's transpired with the addition of Jacob Trouba over the last little while. I mean, are they on the right track, Dennis, heading into the new year?
Well, I think that, like, big picture, like what usually happens when you try to rebuild a franchise, you want structure, you want defense. And if you look at their defense, I think they're 17th in the league in goals against. Now, a lot of it has to do with Joe Stahl, who's been great, and John Gibson, who's a 906 save percentage. It has a lot to do with it. But I think they're 31st in goal scoring. But that's usually what happens when you build a team, Hustler. No team's ever great offensively and poor defensively when they're rebuilding, right? So the questions are, I think when you watch these games tonight, you watch Mason McTavish, you watch Leo Carlson, because that is supposedly going to be their 1-2 punch down the middle going forward. Now, one kid has 7 goals, the other get 5 goals. Zegers is out. So they're better. They're probably a 12 to 14 point performance better, but that's coming off 59 points last year, which wasn't acceptable. So they're a better team. They still give up a lot of shots. I think they give up 2nd in the league, so that's why they need good goaltending. But this is a competitive team now, without question. Look, they just went out, beat Edmonton at home, which Edmonton probably partied the night before in LA, and that's why they didn't win the back-to-back game. And then they went and beat a really good New Jersey team. And they got a great performance in goal, but this is a team that is in now with like the Seattles and the San Jose. So there's been improvement on Greg Cronin. Look, I don't think Greg Cronin is going to lead them to the promised land. You probably need the next goaltender. But not unlike when Todd McClellan came to Los Angeles, Hustler, you need a guy to put in structure and commitment to playing defense. And he's done that as well. So they've been better defensively. They're a more competitive team. The only way they can really win games at this point are low-scoring games like the one where they beat, Winnipeg late in the first go-around. I think that's the type of team you've seen. So not explosive offensively. And the question is, will the Cutter-Gaudiers, will the McTavishes, will the Carsons blossom into 25 to 30-goal scores? And if they do, then they're going to be back in the playoffs in a couple of seasons and could be a very dangerous team because there's a lot of young talent on this team. It just has to gel more.
Has the ship sailed on Trevor Zegras? He's got four goals this season, Dennis.
Yeah. I think when you look at the body language and the facial expressions, he needs to go. You know what he needs to do? He needs to be traded to Montreal so he can play with Cole Caulfield, right? That would solve everything. He'd be happy. It would be great. It'd be a great story, whatever, right? I think so. I just think he wants out of there. It's been too long. He wanted to be the guy in Anaheim, and he's not going to be the guy. So for all those reasons, I think that it's best for him to move on and find the second stop in his career where he can flourish because it just hasn't happened. Now, maybe the expectations were too high. Depends on what your opinion was of Zegras coming out of his draft year. But he's a creative player who needs to play with other creative players, and it just hasn't happened in Anaheim for him, unfortunately.
You mentioned Lucas Dostal. He, early on was one of the great stories of the season, and he still has really impressive numbers. I mean, playing on a young rebuilding team.
Yes, sir.
To have a 914, to have a 500 record.
Yep.
He's been a real nice surprise. He's not going anywhere, but I do imagine they're still open for business. I mean, for this roster we see tonight, if you're sitting in a press box with the Ducks, who are the players you're looking at or that you're hearing about might have interest around the league, and how active do you think this team will be? I
think they should be active on people. Look, if Pat Verbeek doesn't pick up the phone at trade deadline when these teams call, he's crazy. Right. The guy, I think he's a heart and soul guy, but for this team, but Frank Vetrano, right, who does have 9 goals, 10 assists this season, and he's playing on the top line with Strome and Terry. That would be a guy I think would be great in the playoffs. I think that's and then, because look, they've traded Cam Fowler. They made that move, right? You're not going to really move on anybody else. The young kids they're having on defense like Lacombe and Mintyukov, they're not going anywhere. So I think that's the one guy that would be in play. But, if somebody calls for a Robbie Fabry, you got to and granted, the return for Robbie Fabry is going to make a difference really in the big picture. But I think that with respect to who's been signed and who's there, and you're not trading a Troy Terry, he's their leading goal scorer. Killorn, is a quality guy you brought into for the room as well. Gudas, unless you're going to get a massive overpayment, and you could for a player like that, he's not going to.
Yeah, Gudas was a guy I was interested in. I mean, you look at Winnipeg that wants to add some size and add some toughness, and he's a legit psycho. I mean, if you're looking for a guy,
no question.
If you're looking for a guy that might actually be able to legitimately put the fear of retribution or something like that in an opponent, Gudas is that guy.
Yeah. But I think the way he's helped, he leads his team now. And the one argument you can make, Hustler, is that you got a comparable player, like from a physicality standpoint, in Trouba on the right side as well. So if you wanted to move on off that one-at type of player, you could do it with Gudas, but he means too much to this team right now. So like I said, I mentioned him only because if there's a significant overpayment, you would have to pull a trigger on him because this team isn't close yet. But I think the one guy you're looking at is probably Frankie Vetrano. That's a guy who, what are most teams that are contending looking for? Like either depth on defense or scoring. And Frankie's got a nose around the net. There was some talk about trading him last year. He brought him back. That would be the player that I think could really, if he's looking to make a move to maximize value and return, I think it would be Frankie Vetrano at this point.
Hey, how's Trouba doing heading into the new year in his new spot? It's a long way away from New York. We knew about his family situation. Is he kind of happy to be there and moving forward? How's he fitting in? And is this a temporary stop, I guess, should be the other part of this question for Trouba.
Well, if you're not happy living in Newport Beach and playing hockey for a living, I can't help you, right? So I assume he's happy. Here's the thing. I'm sure from a pressure standpoint, from a release standpoint, it has to be good for him.
Oh,
right. It has to. Didn't matter where. Granted, it's Southern California, which is great, and it's a nice young team. But yeah, look, he's adjusting. Do I think he'll ultimately wind up there? No, because, somebody's going to come calling. It depends how he plays as well. And depends what the return is. Plus, they took on old salary. Like if he's going to move, he's not going to move with his entire salary. So is Pat Verbeek willing to retain? I don't know. What's the return going to be? Probably a conditional second, maybe conditional third or something like that. So I think there'll be interest in this player. But again, the question for Pat Verbeek is Trouba part of your short-term core? like the transition that will take your team to a contender where other younger players, younger defense would stand up and now lead this team. That's the question. Do you have enough leadership? If you traded Chuba, is there still enough of mature leadership with respect to Strome and Killorn and Gudas that we talked about? I think there is. But if it fits well there and it gives this team a little bit more of an edge, because now you mentioned it, Hustler, now there's two defense pairings that you can't keep your head down when you get on the ice for. Both Gudas and Truba's, and they don't play on the same pairing. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Trouba. I think it is a means towards an end, but I think if they had to move him, I certainly think there had to be some salary tension on Anaheim's part.
So Dennis Bernstein's with us from the fourth period. Dennis, our first visit of 2025. When we look at the NHL standings in the West, and by points percentage, because Vancouver would edge Calgary out slightly, they've got the game in hand. You've got Winnipeg, Minnesota, Colorado in playoff spots in the Central. Right. The Knights, the Kings, and Oilers in the 3 playoff spots in the Pacific. Dallas and Vancouver would technically be the wild cards. Calgary nipping at the heels. Assuming Vancouver is in and Calgary is out, does anything change until the playoffs, or are those our 8 playoff teams in your mind?
Maybe St. Louis. Because there's so much strife in Vancouver right now. And Demko isn't back to 100%, and the JT and PD stuff, and it's not the same feel-good feeling there was last season there, right? And I get it. JT Miller is tough to play with. Like, everybody knows it. But he's a 100-point player. Also, you need him on your team, and he's your MVP. So I don't think so. What I think you can etch in stone right now is only one thing. Kings and Oilers first round, part 4.
Yeah. No kidding, eh? That'd be 4
I already
straight
made my
years.
reservations for the JW Marriott in Edmonton for April for the playoffs already. So I think that's the one thing. But yeah, I don't think much changes, right? Because Dallas, they won a couple in a row. They're getting a little bit better. But you look at the teams below the line when you mention those 8, and I'm like, okay, maybe. It's a nice story in Calgary. They're hanging in there. They played great at home. St. Louis has some really good offensive players. But, can Monty find the way to make this team play better defensively? So, yeah, I think of those 8 that you mentioned, maybe one falls out, and I think the one that would be Vancouver.
Now, what about the East? You've got the Leafs, Panthers, and Bruins in the 3 spots in the Atlantic, the Caps, Devils, and Hurricanes in the Met, the Lightning, and the Ottawa Senators are the wild card teams right now. And the Sens have 3 games in hand on Pittsburgh, 2 on Columbus, 2 on. So they've got games to play, and they've got a very slight lead. But, if you extrapolate it, add 3 or 4 more points onto it if you played out the games. They put themselves in a good position. Do they make it? And who of the teams that are out right now do you think has the best chance to legitimately pushing for that 8th spot?
Isn't it amazing what happens to a team when they get a good goaltender?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Oh, we're in a playoff spot. After we haven't made the playoffs in over a decade, we get a good goaltender, and we're in a playoff spot. I'll say this: what's going on with the Habs? 7 of last 10, 3 straight.
They're winning games, but they're still not that particularly good. I think this is just a nice little blip on the map.
Yeah, what a great step. But to have the same record as the Pittsburgh Penguins and better than the Islanders and Red Wings, that's a little story. I look at these teams and I say the only team, they're so bad right now. But can the Rangers really miss the playoffs? I guess they can, right? There's 7 points out.
Jump 7 teams too.
Yeah, I know. But if you can win it, but if the when you look at the teams below the line, could conceivably the Rangers win 8? Not this team, but at some point, could they win 8 out of 10? Yeah, none of these other teams, but below the line, aren't winning 8 out of 10. So they went on a nice streak to get there. But no, I don't see Pittsburgh as a playoff team. Columbus is a nice story given what happened with the Gaudreaus, and they've played a nice, brand of hockey, 500. Flyers, bad defensively, can't get a save. So no, I don't see any of these teams. And the Islanders, they're just not good enough offensively, man. And the one team that really is disappointing, and I know, look, guys now in there, I spent 4.5 years with McClellan's going to give more structure to the Red Wings. But when you watch them play the last couple of games under Lalonde, that team didn't care. They went on the ice skating like an October preseason game. I'm sure Todd will get them straight with respect to their mindsets and their heads. But yeah, I think you're looking at, because, hey, Hustler, you know what? Nobody's talking about Tampa Bay. Like Tampa Bay got a legit shot to win that division. They do. Like they're plus 37. I really like them, but the teams below the line, I don't have faith in any of them because I think all these teams, starting with the 9th seed in the East, they're all very flawed teams. Like they're serious. Like the Rangers, we talked about the problems. We know about the Sabres. We didn't have to mention that, but there's significant problems. You mentioned the Habs really aren't that good. The Flyers can't get a save. Columbus, So I don't see any one of these teams going, other than the Rangers, maybe winning 8 out of 10 and then really solidifying a playoff spot for them.
Pittsburgh's the one team. I mean, I could see just Sidney Crosby being vintage Crosby for 2 weeks, putting the team on his back and getting a couple extra wins, because they're the one team that is in striking distance. And just to your point about the Lightning, like by points percentage, are far ahead of Boston. I mean, they're 2 points back, but they've got 5 games in hand. So. Absolutely, Tampa is right there. Dennis, before we go, you mentioned goaltending, and I am going to make a point of doing this, particularly with influential people of the hockey media. Let me present the case to you. Connor Hellebuyck is leading the league in wins by a lot, save percentage, goals against average, shutouts, minutes played. Mm-hmm. He seems to be a lock for the Vezina. Mm-hmm. Should he not be the leader in the clubhouse right now for the Hart Trophy?
Ooh.
He's crushing everybody else on a number 1 team in the league, doing something no goalie's done in decades.
Maybe. Here's why.
I like to see your wheels turning here as I throw this at you.
And I don't even have to. I don't even think it's McKinnon. Leon has 27 goals in 37 games. He's got 8 game-winning goals and 4 overtime goals. That would be the guy I would point at. And not only that, not for nothing, he's never going to get enough love because Kucherov is a wizard, without question. Like one of the most creative wingers that's ever played in this game, right? I could, if you're not going to have a 125-point player this year, then maybe you make the case for Hellebuyck. It's yeah.
Put it this way, if he doesn't
You're
win
not going to
this
convince
year,
me as a voter
basically
he's number 1.
You just need to say that goalies are not eligible, because he has been so much better and more valuable, like on every account. Like even if there was someone that was going to go for 60 goals, I mean, he's lapping the field at the most important position in the game that for whatever reason gets overlooked all the time.
Well, but
the numbers and the team performance speaks for themselves.
But here's what works against him, Hustler. If this was a crappy offensive team you had in Winnipeg, I get it. They're the 3rd best offensive team in the league. That to me, that would hurt his candidacy, because he's not Shesterkin, because he doesn't have to go out and shut out every team. Like he does, like his effectiveness is there. I think that might work against him, saying, this team is really, really good. And with a lesser goaltender, maybe they're like, all right, 8 to 10 points. But it didn't. Look, Winnipeg would not be a playoff team if they didn't have Hellebuyck, right? It's a damn good team. Right. There's more than one reason they're at 705. So that's the only mitigating thing with respect to that. Would I have a problem voting for a goalie as number 1 on my Hart ballot? A little bit of a problem. But also, to your point, you'd have to have numbers like Connor does to make the case for it. And you could make the case for it because there isn't an overwhelming. Like right now, McKinnon is the number 1 scorer in the league. Right. Is he overwhelmingly going to win the Hart? No, absolutely not. He's not. Right? The team might not even win the division. So it's a tough call. Like, and again, like down the stretch, if the Jets, let's say, have a little bit of breathing room, how much does Hellebuyck play down the stretch? Like, because now
maybe
you
not as much as he is right now. And that
because of what happened last year in the playoffs, maybe you want him to take some time off. I get it. Like it's an interesting question. And I know in the league, like there has been an MVP that's been it. Maybe this is the second year. I just need to see more what happens inside the season. I wouldn't be averse to doing it, but it would have to be like there'd have to be a gap between like Hellebuyck and like the next best skater. I'm not sure there's going to be that big of a gap.
I will argue that gap already exists, Dennis, and we will see. We will see how it goes going forward. But just make sure that when you're on doing your rounds, talking with everybody else around the league, that there is a very, very compelling argument that needs to start right now, that this guy absolutely, at minimum, should be one of the top candidates for this award. And if he keeps doing what he's doing, should be there with Carey Price and Theodore, the last 2 goalies to win the tournament.
I think there'll be enough voters that will put him on the ballot if the trends continue. At 1, I'm not sure, but I think you might be surprised at how many people might say, okay, top 5. Yeah, I think so.
If Shesterkin had these numbers, he'd be the runaway favorite for it.
No, that's what happens when you play in New York as opposed to Winnipeg.
Exactly.
You know that.
So let's figure this out. Dennis, listen, all the best to you, Dave, and the entire crew at the fourth period. Have a great one. Enjoy the action tonight, and we'll look forward to talking to you in the coming weeks. It's going to be a fun run to the Four Nations, and of course, Stanley Cup playoff time in a few months as well. Thanks for doing this, and Happy New Year.
Well, it's a privilege to be on WST. Hustler, thanks for the time. We'll talk to you soon.
Best. All right, always a good chat with our pal Dennis Bernstein. Even if we need to work him a little harder to start flying the flag for our guy Hellebuyck, who should be the leading candidate for not just the Vezina Trophy, but the Hart Trophy. We will keep on banging this drum on this program, especially when some of our friends from the national media come on. Hey, speaking of that, let's get to a little fan feedback for fansfirst.ca for the first time of 2025. Fans First features no fees. What you see is what you pay. Your number one option for buying and selling Winnipeg tickets on the resale market. Check out their website today, fansfirst.ca. And as I mentioned, what you see is what you pay, unlike StubHub and some of the other gougers in the ticket game. All right, lots of comments coming in during the Dennis Bernstein. SK, this goes back to what the Jets would be looking to add. The Jets need a beast of a 1B, 2A center with size and speed. That would be great. They need an angry honey badger of a top right-handed defenseman. One of those helps, but both means they have a chance to go somewhere. I mean, listen, to get both of those, you're talking about massive asks, probably the other way, but I don't disagree that those would be the two missing pieces right now of a team that is already set up again. Lots of talk about the MVP and the Hart Trophy right now. I did see somebody said he thinks Hellebuyck would be a strong second to Nate McKinnon. I guess my point on this is, goalies have won this award in the past. What more could Connor Hellebuyck do to be the leader right now? He's leading in goals against, in save percentage, in wins, in shutouts, in minutes, everything, and by a lot. So, if Carey Price won it in his year, if Theodore won it in his year, I would argue that the difference from Hellebuyck to the rest is even greater this year than it was in those seasons. So he should be getting the clinic. And I knew T. Konopoli would love the mention of Radko Gudas, speaking of potential trade acquisitions. Gudas is that sort of, as I said, I mentioned, he is a bit of a psycho. And he certainly is an intimidating force and would add a very different dynamic to the Jet blue line that T. Konopoli says Gudas, Vetrano, Olivier, and playoff success. And Bridget does love Dennis. When Dennis talks, you feel like you're getting the real inside info. Keep your comments coming. The chat's been popping for the first show of 2025. More fan feedback every day, brought to you by fansfirst.ca. By fans, for fans, no fees. Check out the site today over at Fans First. All right, just before we bring in our pal Jeff Hamilton, a big happy new year to our friends at Princess Auto. Proudly Winnipeg, founded here in Winnipeg, headquartered here in Winnipeg, and continuing to grow across the country. Princess Auto has the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new for 2025 is waiting for you at Princess Auto. You can visit them on Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, out in Brandon. And of course, you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Huge happy new year to our great supporters over at Princess Auto. A big shout out to our friends at Canadian Club as well. Might still be able to find the odd bottle remaining of the Invitation Series, the Canadian Club, 18-year-old. It was, of course, the first ever 18-year-old that they've released, and it offers the well-known smooth, well-balanced taste of Canadian Club Classic, carefully aged and bottled at a higher proof for a full-body tasting experience. The 18-year-old high proof was awarded gold at the 2024 International Wine and Spirit Competition. But when it's gone, it's gone. So check out the website or your local Manitoba liquor marts for quantities and grab it before it's done. The Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old high proof CC. Of course, the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And a huge Happy New Year to the gang over at Wallace & Wallace, Winnipeg's fencing and overhead door specialists. If your property needs a new fence, the security and protection of it in 2025, Wallace & Wallace, hey, they've been doing it since 1946 as the leaders in the game. Vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, wood fences. Have you got the right one for you? And if you need to replace your garage door, they also have Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors, one perfect to both match your home, fit it, and add value to it as well. Give Wallace & Wallace a call, 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. All right, for the first time in 2025, enter the Hammer. Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press joins us now. Hammer, Happy New Year. How are you, pal?
Happy New Year, my friend, and the viewers of Winnipeg Sports Talk. We unite here in 2025. They said we wouldn't be here, Huss, but here we are, smiling, laughing. Who's laughing now? It's us.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We are the spirits are high, vibes are high. Listen, I mean, with the way the Jets are playing right now, I think it's making the winter a little warmer, despite the fact that it's going to get chilly for the next few weeks. But hey, they're heating it up at home, and obviously we've got an incredibly interesting CFL offseason to get to with everything around. But listen, just before we get into it, this is not me.
You're leaning into the camera, Huss. What are we getting into here?
This is not me giving you the ribs for not winning the fantasy league, but I mentioned at the end of last year, it could not have been a cooler end to the year in our Winnipeg Media Fantasy League, in that our beloved lost friend, Ted Wyman, who, as you mentioned in the text to the group chat, had never won in fantasy, ever, drafted his greatest team, leaves us, and yet posthumously wins the whole damn thing, coming through with an incredible performance in the final to beat you. It's kind of like Ted's still here with us, kind of laughing and loving every second of this, especially at your expense in the final of all people.
Well, and that's the part that sucks at all this, obviously, besides the fact that Ted's gone, is that, I would have harassed him all week. I would have harassed him as I did with our chats. That would just have been a small dose of what Ted would have gotten this weekend. I probably would have sent him over 100 memes of, domination. I think my entire algorithm right now on my social media is just fantasy football memes and videos. So I would have done that for sure. But yeah, just to recap, Ted left us on November 10th, and we never touched his team. Like he didn't have the luxury, obviously, of adding or deleting anyone. Taylor Allen, colleague at the Free Press, is the commissioner of our league. He just set his lineup, what was best viewed lineup. So we didn't have the luxury of even adding anybody for those, nearly 2 months of games. And then I believe he set the high score every week or most weeks in the playoffs, and he didn't even, because I think when at that time he was second in the league and he dropped to third, so he didn't even have an easier route by the end. He had to play all 3 weeks of playoffs or whatever. So yeah, and to your point, man, I mean, there were times where he would talk about fantasy. Like, I love fantasy football. I'm in 4 leagues. But I didn't love it nearly as much as he did. There were so many times where he'd talk about running backs or receivers, and I'd be like, honestly, man, like, I don't even care about fantasy that much. Like, I don't want to talk about it as much as you want to talk about it. And he would we were in a pick'em pool together, and he hadn't won even a weekly prize. He certainly hadn't won the season end award, but he hadn't even won a weekly prize. And when we joined together for the first time, I don't know how many years he'd been with this group, but it had been a bit. We won our first week. And we never won again after that. But he talked about that for like months, about how we want to pick 'em pool in the week. So I know he'd be I know he'd be on cloud 9 right now, and something tells me he's on cloud 9 anyway. So perfect ending to the season. One of those rare situations, Huss, where I don't mind finishing second.
It's I've just pulled it up, and you're right. I didn't know this. This was destiny. He had the highest. It didn't matter who he played in the first round. He had the highest score of everyone. Remis ended up being on the wrong end of that. In the semifinal, put up almost 180, hung the L on Billick, and again would have beaten anybody else in the playoffs, and then put up another 153 to win the final. So I'm sure Ted, at his bar top upstairs, wherever he is, tuning into WST, is having a large laugh right now and loving every second of it. But, listen, as much as 2024 was a great year in a lot of ways, that was something that, we'll all remember. And, hey, the Teddy Bowl moving forward. I mean, after he ran the table and won it, the league pretty much has to name the championship afterwards. So that'll be something that I think we'll all take forward. Hey, listen, I want to get to the Bombers a little bit for you in a minute.
I feel like we need to offer some closure on people wondering, well, if the guy's not here and he won the fantasy championship, we're throwing a party in his honor. It was decided he passed, right after he passed. So that's going to be his, we're going to throw a party in his honor. Kind of a themed Ted party.
Oh, and by the way, another thank you, just speaking of Ted. We went in, and obviously when Ted passed, there was a number of people that were throwing super chats our way, kind of in Ted's name. Thank you to everyone that did that. And we just really made a donation of a few $100s to cancer care in Ted's name. And
very
we'll
cool.
certainly
Thank you for
do that again in the future. Listen, just before we get to just the Bombers in the off season, it's been a while. The Jets are about to play game 40 tonight, game 41 on the weekend. They've kind of survived their toughest part of the season. They had the historic start to the year. Connor Hellebuck's looked as good as he ever has right now. We know there's some demons to be slayed come game 83, but where are you at on the local hockey team right now as we get into 2025?
How can you not be high on this group, right? It's the same thing that you said, right? I think this isn't it. When you looked, when I saw that post by the NHL on the Jets, that the Winnipeg Jets had won the most games in the calendar year of 2024. I just thought, wow. That to me was, that nobody else can say that, right? that's what matters is wins. Doesn't really matter how many points you had. Then, of course, the follow-up, if you're in that conversation and you're boasting your chest, or you're puffing your chest out as a Winnipeg Jets fan, the first comment from some, nobody on Twitter is going to be, well, good luck in the playoffs. You're a first-round exit, and that's essentially where it matters, right? So that's, I think there's a healthy reluctancy even with a first-place team in Winnipeg. I also think, this stretch here, you've talked about how difficult the schedule has been for Winnipeg, how many times they've been on the road and how many times they haven't slept in their own bed, all the stuff that comes with being on the road and whatnot. This is a real opportunity to flex their muscles here, play at home in front of their faithful, play against teams, several of which on this eight game trip are all beatable teams. I guess you can make the argument being first place, everyone's beatable, but if you look at the standings, a lot of these teams are beatable. So the Jets were able to make hay, obviously, right off the bat. They went through, some issues here, but they got everything you need, right? They have an incredible goaltender. They have a great power play. They're obviously their defensive play has moved into this year. I don't think it's as strong, perhaps, and there's certainly been games and frustrating games, but that's 32 fan bases in the NHL. Anyone who wagers on the NHL knows that, it doesn't matter who you necessarily play. Anyone can beat anyone on any day. And I think the Jets are proving that they're a great team. I think they're going to need to add. I do think that, as like any great team, any team that's in that, contender status, you need to be as good as you possibly can be at the best time of the year. So I expect another busy trade deadline or leading up to the trade deadline, and whether that's adding pieces as rentals or bringing in players with some years or tenure on them, that we'll see what happens. But the Jets are in a prime position. They need to stay there. They need to stay there around the trade deadline, because I think there's a lot of short memories in the NHL, particularly with players. You bring up guys like Radko Gudas, Huss. I mean, that guy's got a modified no trade clause with 16 teams. I don't like pushing Winnipeg in there, but usually that team's on the no trade list. So it's going to be a challenge, but you showcase to teams across the league your ability to win games and your dominance that we've seen from Winnipeg. And there should be players who are interested in going for a cup here in Winnipeg. So I think if you're...
Yeah, and you know what, Jeff, just to that point, I mean, we've seen that before. I mean, we all remember Stastny sort of coming out of the blue in 17-18. And like for guys that don't have a lot of term on their contract, or expiring deals, even if they have no moves. I mean, coming to Winnipeg at the beginning of March, if you're joining a first place team that you think, might give you a legitimate chance to make a deep run and potentially challenge for a Stanley Cup, I mean, that's why guys play the game, and it can be a great equalizer. I mean, it's certainly not happening if you're on the other side of the ledger, but I think there is something to be said for getting to that point, being able to prove that you are a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, and having some guys being a lot more open to potential of becoming
Here's the other
Jets.
thing, Huss, too, is that like there's so much, even for a first place team, there feels like so much opportunity on the roster, right? I mean, this team is still trying to figure out, it's obviously not its top line, but it's second line. And, I know the centerman's obviously a big opportunity there. If you're a centerman floating around, I mean, whether you're thinking of Winnipeg long-term or not, there's potential for you, like a Stastny in his first trade, to pivot that into a contract somewhere else, right? There's that benefit too. This is a business. So if hanging out in Winnipeg during what I would argue next to the summer is some pretty good months to be here, March, April, May, June, that's not a bad sales pitch.
No, for sure. And, Vlad Nemetsnikov has been all that they could have asked and more. I mean, it actually is amazing that he has been able to, hold that spot down, impact games in many different ways. But to your point, I mean, if you are a center, like for instance, that maybe is a free agent, you're on a team that, isn't really going anywhere, you get the opportunity to come and slide in between Cole Perfetti and Nikolai Ehlers, like just on
when it was Patrick Laine and Nikolai Ehlers?
Yeah,
remember
exactly.
It's like you could just insert this conversation from 5 years ago or whatever.
For sure, and that's exactly what the situation was before. So, they'll do that. This month, let's bring it up. So, Ducks tonight, Detroit on the weekend. Was that saying this is a 6:00 game now? Maybe that was changed earlier on. I thought it was originally
what night?
The Detroit one?
Yeah.
That one got swapped with the game with the same day as the West final. They swapped the times because TSN and Sportsnet had to trade games. So they moved.
Okay, cool.
They moved the West final game, the game that was that day, to the afternoon, and they moved this one, which was supposed to be afternoon, to Saturday night.
That's cool. Everyone will be in for a. I'd far rather have a 6:00 game on a Saturday night than a 2:00 in the afternoon. Then the Preds come back, a really challenging back-to-back with the Kings on Friday night and then the Avalanche on the Saturday night, and then Vancouver, Seattle, and Calgary. The Jets have been great at home. They'll want to get off and, get Connor Hellebuyck his 300th win tonight and start that off in style. But to your point, Jeff, there is a real opportunity with, as Adam Lowry said earlier, practice time available, no travel, to take what's already been an amazing first half of the season with a bit of a gap over the rest of the teams chasing them in the Central Division and expand that going into the rest of January, early February, and that Four Nations break.
Well, that's the thing, man. I mean, it's hard to get at the top. It's hard to stay at the top. I mean, whether it's everybody, whether it's the Anaheim Ducks or it's a better team, they're good. The Jets have a target on their backs. Everyone's going to show up for that game. It's just that's what you have to do when you play the first place team. And when you see the way Winnipeg's, way they're aligned, the way they're playing, that's not an easy task. So I look at these teams here, and yeah, there's some, Calgary is really surprising, but the Jets are at home. The Jets play well at home. This is, they have a great power play. They have a great goaltending. I hate to leave Eric Comrie out of that, despite maybe some of the win-loss records here. They have all the pieces. They're getting healthier. We'll see what happens with Dylan Sandberg, but this is where you take full advantage of being at home. To your point, right? There's advantages to being on the road too. There's advantages to this team being on the road, right? People like getting away from Winnipeg, and it's not just specifically Winnipeg, their home venue, away from their families. I don't mean that negatively. It's just nice to get on the road with the boys and play games. And now you're here, you're settled in, and now it's time to make hay. I loved Adam Lowry's comments, right? They're simple and, maybe even a bit of an eye raiser that you have to say it, but I think you have to say it. It's that there's an opportunity in front of you, but you're not going to win all 8 games tonight, right? You're going to play it. And I think that's the Jets continue to learn, right? They continue to learn that to play with success, right? To battle through adversity, but also to play with success. And playing with success is bringing a neutral attitude mindset to each game, not viewing, games too far ahead of themselves, which is difficult to do in this league because you play every second night, right? You're thinking about that Friday game sometimes on Wednesday and that's just natural human behavior, but focusing in, dialing in, using whatever it is you need to for motivation. This is kind of the dog days of the season, right? I mean, this is obviously they're all important. They all count for the same, but this stretch should be your opportunity to take advantage of some of these teams. Because I look at some of those teams, Huss, and they got some pretty daunting schedules and are on some long road trips too. So that medicine's now being fed the other way, and it's time for the Jets to cash in.
They probably the timing of 8 games at home probably could have been more advantageously placed in another month than early to mid January.
Totally.
But
yeah, the Jets are going to be the miserable ones being in the polar.
So fired up for that first road trip afterwards, and it doesn't look like it's going to be seasonably warm either. So. Hey, you know what? This team though has seemed to focus, and
that works for the Jets' favor, man. When those teams get off the plane and it's 1 in the morning and it's 32 degrees, I actually been on the plane, the one and only time I've been on the Jets charter. I got off and it was cold, and my car was not started like the Jets were. It was not a good scene, man. It is cold, so they got to live it, but they live in their nice places. And I always have this belief: if you don't want to go outside and you're a Winnipeg Jet, you don't actually have to go outside once in the winter.
Yeah, legit. I mean, you're pulling into a parkade on that down level. You're walking right into the building.
Let's assume you have underground parking in the city,
That's I'm sure they tell all the guys, by the way, you're going to want to make sure wherever you live,
who's got the best heated driveway guy,
You'll thank yourself up later on. Speaking of Hellebuck, he has been absolutely brilliant. He's running away with the Vezina Trophy. I think he should absolutely be at the top of people's heart conversation as well. That we'll see what happens in the second half of the season. But usage for Hellebuck is a big topic. He leads the league again in minutes so far. And I mean, why wouldn't you keep putting him in when he's playing the way that he is? And Eric Comrie's been a bit of a hard luck story. He's getting a lot of these second end of back-to-backs, the toughest spots, and hasn't had a ton of run support. But you look at this schedule. So it's Thursday, then Saturday. Basically, there's one back-to-back, and they're home games. Other than that, you've got 1 or 2 days between every one of these games. I honestly look at the schedule, and I wonder how much or when does Eric Comrie get in? The irony of the whole thing is the one game that you would think, okay, that's the Comrie start, the second end of the back-to-back, is the game against the Colorado Avalanche, which certainly within the division is probably the most important game of the entire 8-game homestand. So I do wonder whether, they give him the game on the 7th against the Preds. Maybe he gets in against Vancouver or against Seattle, but particularly, do they actually have Colorado come in for, I would argue, the biggest game of those 8 and not have Connor Hellebuck in the net? It'll be really interesting to see how this goes, and then how different the workload is for Hellebuck once he returns from the Four Nations, depending on where this team is in the standings.
Yeah, so a lot there. I thought that, I thought Eric Comrie played okay against Colorado in his last outing, right? I mean, .917 save percentage, but yeah, that's going to be a massive game. You look at the Four Nations Cup here, obviously Connor Hellebuck is going to be a massive piece to that Team USA's puzzle. and their pursuit of glory in that tournament. Are they calling it a gold medal, or are they calling it gold? Do we even know that? Like, or is it just the championship, like the Four Nations
I keep on
Cup?
calling it the Four Nations Cup, but I don't think there is a cup.
Is there even a cup? Because there must not be a gold, silver, and bronze in a four.
Listen, how it works is you play 3 games. I mean, you play the Swedes for the Americans. You play the Swedes, the Finns, the Canadians.
Yeah, round robin.
And the top 2 teams play in the championship game.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So, I mean, 4 games is the max that anyone would play.
I mean, that's not a horrible, that's not a lot of games, especially for Connor Hellebuyck. But I really do think this, and it kind of contradicts with Hellebuck's comments after the playoffs last year, right? I think a lot of people, we talked about this last week, a lot of people heard Connor Hellebuyck say the things he said after that first round exit, and we're just kind of like, huh? And then you see him playing this year, like, okay, yeah, I guess he really was playing his best. But you watched him play, and you're like, okay, well, that doesn't really add up. I mean, he claimed he didn't really see any of the pucks that went past him. I'm putting words in his mouth now, but I just wonder, is there a coincidence to, his playoff success or lack thereof with the fact that he leads the NHL in games played and minutes played and shots against and all that? I mean, we were talking about this last week, and I really do think that the Jets, if anything, need to do a better job of, whether it's sharing more minutes at certain times in games, doing a better job of the wear and tear, just, that load management of their players. And the guys I specifically think about, and we talked about last week, was, Mark Scheifele, right? In the playoffs last year, he looked exhausted. He looked like he couldn't do a lot of the same things had been doing during the season. And, I remember even you and I chatting in like February, March, it just felt like this team was just kind of going balls to the wall and not really taking into consideration the wear and tear of the season, having to take an extra gear, right? Rick Bowness being like, you think this is tough. The playoffs is that extra gear. So moving back to Connor Hellebuyck, I wonder if this isn't an opportunity because they're in first place. Like I wonder in the league, Huss, you look at all the teams that kind of are in and around first place. Probably go talk to the historical teams, right? Like, how important is winning first versus, you your team is going to be, come the playoffs. Like, I wonder if those teams that are perennial playoff teams, perennial contenders during various eras, if first place really mattered to them. And I tend to think if they were telling the truth, I mean, of course you want first place, you want that President's Trophy. It's a lot of credibility to your organization, your team. You probably even get a banner for it. You get obviously home ice advantage throughout the playoffs for as long as you go. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you're not winning and you're gassed in the playoffs, who really cares if you finish first in the regular season? So, I don't know all the science behind it. I do know the Jets, obviously, as an organization, have people who take into consideration with all these things. But it feels like with Connor Hellebuyck for really ever since he started, and clearly it's working in the regular season, he gets a lot of say, right? When maybe he needs a little bit of rest. Maybe he needs that. But, again, I go back to Connor Hellebuyck, and I'm sure this is what the Jets do. Connor Hellebuyck needs what Connor Hellebuyck needs, and they'll give him what he needs. So I do think it's an interesting conversation, whether it's trying to figure out where Eric Comrie is going to play. Eric Comrie has not failed you as a goaltender. Yes, he hasn't been, incredible necessarily in all games, but he's given his team a chance to win. He's given this team a chance to compete in pretty much every game he's been in for the most part. So I do think, whether it's trying to figure out where he fits in, I think you got to make it a priority to find where he fits in, to give Connor Hellebuyck come March that good feeling that we've been seeing from him, through this season so far.
You know what?
It's an interesting conversation.
Sometimes
right?
I say, and I kind of do believe that Hellebuyck is sort of built different than, the majority of NHL goalies right now. But if we really want to, dig into that a little bit more, let's go back to the Jets' greatest season when they went to the conference finals in 2017-18. Hellebuyck that year played a career-high 67 games and was able to get to that conference final. Mm-hmm. Last year, he played 60 games. Now, I still maintain that this wasn't like Connor Hellebuyck just was not good in the playoffs. I mean, to me, the Jets they weren't even close to their best in that. And I think he was the victim of a lot of that. Mm-hmm. But he played 60 games last year. Well, Sergei Bobrovsky won the Stanley Cup. He played 58. So again, you're talking about the difference of 2 goals. And then Bob went in and played another 24 in the playoffs. So Listen, right now, I think they just do what they're doing and manage it. And you know what? If you play them a lot and you win a lot of games and you're in that position where you can really work with him, Wade Flaherty, and plan out that stretch in the final month of the season or the final 6 weeks.
And that's what I think
season.
it is, Huss. I think it's not end results games, like you. And it's interesting because I couldn't quote it, but Bobrovsky's had a couple seasons in Florida, right? You know what I mean? Like he's kind of made his way back to the top of the mountain. And on top of it, you're talking about that greatest season, that was 2018. That was 6 years ago, and 6 years is a long time as a career.
I'm just saying, like, just the amount of games. Like,
no, for sure.
No, it wasn't like he only played 45 games that year and then went and took the team to the conference final.
For sure, and he's a better goalie now than he was then. And I imagine you can make the argument he knows his body way better now than he did back then. So, like, there's, my point wasn't to counter, as much as it was to say that you can kind of use stats in your own way. I mean, and at the same time, I mean, it's a reputation you're going to have as a goalie, right? If you can't, if it's a fairly or unfairly, and it's clearly unfairly, that a lot of it falls on the goalie. So if you're getting eliminated from the first round season after season, yes, they're going to be pointing fingers to everybody, but they also are going to be pointing fingers to your goaltender who's winning the league awards, but isn't, finding that way to do it. And that's, look, this is it's a narrative until it's not a narrative. And so that's where the Jets, and I think the Jets, you talk about being built differently. I think you have Mark Scheifele playing some of his best hockey, if not his best hockey right now. And I think you're finding maturity in these guys. I think, a lot of people would have looked at this group and said they're they're kind of getting out of their prime. I'd almost argue that some of these guys, whether their prime lasts for more than 1, 2, 3 years, we'll see. But I think a lot of these guys are getting to a stage where they're in, playing their best hockey and are in their prime and can deal with the mental hurdles despite some of the results, right? Teams, Colorado, other teams in the past who before they had sustained success in the playoffs had to go through that heartbreak. Now we got to figure out here in Winnipeg if that's the Winnipeg Jets have been building towards that or if it's going to be more of that. But I mean, you look at, I mean, that's a question that will only be answered, come the spring here. But what you see, you have to like. And what you see here is another year of a team that's playing strong hockey, playing well 5-on-5, has that, has the power play now, clicking to a way that wasn't last year, which we know a power play like goaltending can mask a lot of the deficiencies on your team. And that's happened certainly at times throughout the year, but I would argue compared to a lot of teams in this league, far less. So if they can kind of figure things out here, get healthy at the right time, there's all these things that matter, right? Whether it's, there's a little more control. I was going to compare it to fantasy football, kind of bring it full circle here. It's not obviously like fantasy football in the luck that you need, but you do need things to go your way. And that's not just, bounces on the ice. That's also luck off the ice and injuries and all those things. So a lot of things factor into this. I think the Jets, certainly are that team ready to take the next step. Whether or not they will, we'll have to, again, wait and see.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, listen, when you come short in the playoffs based on, compared to your expectations, and although I guess, anyone expecting the Jets just to roll over a team like the Avalanche, I think we're probably maybe not paying attention to the big picture. Nothing was going to be easy.
Well, the year before it was, thank goodness they get to play Vegas and not the Oilers, right? Like it doesn't matter, right?
There's nothing easy.
Nothing's going to be easy. Time. Yeah, there's no gimme round. There's no, there's.
To your point about, you look at the goalie. You look at any time you disappoint, you look at the best players. Connor Hellebuyck is the best player, and fairly or unfairly, he'll wear some of that. But I think if you go back and watch some of those games again, you'll realize that this was not about goaltending. And hopefully the maturity of this team, they certainly seem to have like a resolute commitment to being better, that you can continue to build and, be at your best come playoff time, as opposed to last year when they were far away from it. Reba and I are just, we've been talking over the last few days on the big stories of 2024. But I'm kind of looking at the big stories of 2025 coming in. And this upcoming, never mind season, before we even get to the season, decisions to be made in this off season, but then I don't even know, in a lot of ways, it could some ways be franchise and era defining year for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. with Mike O'Shea and Kyle Walters on the final year of their contract, Zach Collaros on the final year of his contract. How different is this offseason and upcoming year than maybe have been during a time of excellence, of consistency for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers under the O'Shea and Kyle Walters era?
Yeah, it's different, man. I mean, it's different because there's moving pieces. What have we been saying for years? That the continuity has been the Winnipeg Blue Bombers' best and dearest and most closest friend. I mean, this idea that they were just going to run it back every year made sense because they were going to the championship every year. I think this year feels different for more than just that reason. And maybe it's a result of the fact that the Bombers have now lost the Grey Cup 3 times in a row. That's 1 time hurt, 2 times stung, 3 times is just, you feel like you're last place almost. You know what I mean? In a weird feeling, right? Like this feeling, you felt it 3 years in a row now. And so the moving pieces, though, some fans out there, maybe lots of fans out there, would have argued that perhaps that could have been done last offseason, or I wouldn't say maybe the season before that, because 2021 was a special year. But this team, and I mentioned this, we've talked about this in the past, they have been making moves throughout the season to get younger in certain areas. They just have a nucleus of leadership, right? That is the Adam Bighills, the Patty Neufeld, Zach Collaros, obviously, Stanley Bryant, Willie Jefferson. These guys have all been around for so long. They're staples in Winnipeg. And I think about that group, and outside of maybe Adam Bighill, just with Tony Jones getting signed, they're probably all coming back. Now, is that a good thing? Yeah, I think continuity matters, but I think it's going to take some work around. And right now, Huss, if you looked at the BC Lions, they announced, kind of finalized, they're still waiting on a running backs coach, but the BC Lions finalized their coaching staff, and Kevin Burgoyne's on that list. Kevin Burgoyne is the receivers coach. And you might be able to say, I don't want to say just a receivers coach. There's not a single person who coaches in the CFL that doesn't put their heart and soul into their job and is a contributor of success for their respective franchise. But I'm going to say, people might, it's just a receivers coach. Kevin Burgoyne was more than just a receivers coach. He was a smart guy. He was an O'Shea guy. He was a guy who, bought into the foundation of what Winnipeg was building. And we all know if there's anything that Mike O'Shea is perhaps most challenged by, it's change. It's change particularly to personnel and particularly to the coaching staff. He's a big guy on trust. We saw what happened with Andrew Harris and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, right? The guy was being celebrated as, for sure statue to kind of falling out of favor with the team because he lost trust in Mike O'Shea. It's hard to get it. I'm not saying it's hard to keep it. I think and I shouldn't say necessarily it's hard to get it. Mike O'Shea is not an unreasonable man in his trust, but he does like to know everybody in his group, right? And that's why they've often promoted from within, or they brought in people who you'll hear, even if it's a bit of a distant connection, somebody who Mike, cross paths with, whether it was in Toronto or wherever, or comes highly recommended from somebody who he has in turn a high opinion of. So it takes a little bit here. And so even like losing a guy like Kevin Burgoyne, I think is going to be difficult for the Bombers. And so, they still haven't, well, at least I don't know. I'm not going to suggest they haven't figured out their scouting situation or their assistant general manager. As I mentioned before, I don't think they're going back to a double assistant GM and are going to streamline their scouting. How far that's gone down the line, I'm not sure. I still feel like it's a little bit of holiday season over here in Winnipeg. And so I do think, the Bombers, it's going to be different. I think other teams are going to get better. I think you can make the argument that the Bombers are going to get worse, and it's weird saying that. Like, what does that even mean? They're going to get worse. Like, does that mean they're not going to make it to the Grey Cup? I'm not suggesting that. Does it mean they're going to be second in the West? Who knows? We saw this team play horribly at the beginning of the season and then win 9 of their last 10 games to secure the West. So I'm not putting anything past this group. If they were to bring back this group minus a few players, I still think they would be competitive in the West. And then you look around the league, there's quite a bit of shakeup. I think the only one that's really consistent when you look in the West Division is is probably the BC Lions, it's probably the Saskatchewan Roughriders, not the BC Lions. There's tons of change there, and there's going to be tons of change. That's probably the only team in the West that I see as now benefiting from continuity, at least as much as the Bombers have in the past, and maybe even this year. There's still going to be continuity in that locker room, but with all the changes on the staff and in the front office, and then we'll see what happens with the players. Right, there's still a lot of time, of course, to bring back who you want. This is also a time to identify who might be of interest to join your team, right? I mean, there's a lot, I know that there were some names that the Bombers were looking at last year when things weren't going so well, and they had great seasons, guys like Damien Coxey, out in Toronto, right? Like, you need to find guys who are kind of ready to take off, but are still kind of cheap and want more opportunity, or might be stuck behind, the shadow of one or two players on their team. And the Bombers have been good at identifying those guys. But there's no doubt in my mind, to answer your question finally, is that there's going to be tons of change, and there's going to be lots of familiarity for sure. But I think there's going to be lots of change, much like there was heading into last season when Mike O'Shea addressed the team, saying just as much that this wasn't going to be like typical years.
What just before we go, I mean, you got any feeling for any sort of a timeline for the management and coaching hirings before we even get to the rest of the team?
I have to think they're coming soon here, man. I mean, you don't really sit on these things for that long. And I would argue that the Bombers, who knows what they knew about Burgoyne and the potential of losing him. I don't think it would be necessarily a shocker. I think you'd want to figure out the guys you have in-house and what they're thinking by now. But I would have to imagine, without confirming this, that we're looking at a matter of, I don't even want to say weeks. I almost want to argue, I don't want to say days, and then you have people looking ahead to the weekend here and wondering why there is no announcements here. But look, the BC Lions just announced their staff, and they had a whole new staff, right? For the most part. So yeah, why can't the Bombers come out and announce their staff? If they haven't, they can't be dragging their feet, because business matters. And while you do have, critical minds making decisions and talking about it in Mike O'Shea and Kyle Walters, you got to get, more opinions, more minds to get together and bring their knowledge. So again, I mean, a lot of just because I'm not, talking about what they're doing exactly right now does not mean that they're sitting on their hands. I imagine this has been a process well on its way, but I would be shocked if in 2 weeks from now the Bombers staff wasn't rounded out.
I know Bridget said, I hope the Bombers go all in next season with Grey Cup and Winnipeg and their window kind of closing. I have no doubt that no stone will be left unturned and no dollar will be left unspent to try to get the Bombers not only back to the big game, but over the hump in it. Hammer, the holidays finishing up soon for you. What are you tackling when you're back at work?
This is what I call project season. So I'll dabble with the CFL stuff, and then I'll dig into whatever institution or thing that needs fixing in the province and try to, dig my teeth into it and try to figure it out. So exciting time. I've been really enjoying this time off. I've been really enjoying, because for me, it's tough to take vacation. So if I have a week-long vacation, I'm thinking about work halfway through, or, sure by the end. And now I've had a couple weeks off. I've been enjoying letting the day come to me. I'm not that kind of person. I like to attack the day, but I've been enjoying that, and I'll enjoy it for a few more days before really getting into it. I'll still have some Bomber coverage. I'll still have, stories that come across my desk and figure out and flush out. But
are you at least sleeping in a little bit? I mean, folks, pulling the curtain back, Hammer's a guy that can be out till 2:30 in the morning, and then he's out doing yoga at 6 a.m. Are you?
Well, don't give me that much credit. I can't do yoga. I tried hot yoga a year ago, and it almost killed me, and I don't think I can go back. But I'm an early riser, and that's not because I'm not a big drinker. So at least not in these years. So I'm up always, man. Those are the best time of day to get your work done. If you can get everything, I have my fair share of ADHD. So if I can exhaust myself in all my interests by 9 a.m., I can really start working. Try it. It's amazing. We're going to get you on that, Huss. You're going to get on the Hammer plan, and it's going to be
that would be the ultimate New Year's resolution to change my my schedule.
Just
around.
Meditate and cut out gluten from your life. You don't need to go to the gym. You don't need to do anything. Those are the two things that you need to be patient and healthy.
I think there's a few things that I do enjoy that have gluten in them that could be problematic, but I'll have to check the list of ingredients.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, you have a great one, pal. I'm looking forward to a great 2025. It is great to have you back, and looking forward to big things for yourself, for us, and us together. Have a great one tonight, and stay warm.
Always a pleasure, my friend. I'll actually be in the seats tonight. I got an invite to go to the Jets game, so I go to those every once in a while, and as a spectator. So I'll be
love it. Do you know whether you're upstairs or downstairs?
I can't give people too much hints here.
Well,
I'm kidding. I'm downstairs.
Okay. Well, I may have to make a visit downstairs to come and see you tonight.
You got my number.
I will be in the upper bowl. Have a great one. We'll maybe see you tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much, Huss. Really looking forward to another year at WST. You know how big of fans I am of you guys and what you do and who you are. So thanks so much for everything that you do. It's really special to be. I think I was on the last show before the break, and then
maybe
not. No. I think it was maybe. Oh yeah, no. I got in on the Friday.
Christmas,
Anyways,
maybe.
Yeah, probably. And then to be the first one in there to do, I remember going back to your year anniversary and how much fun I had writing that story. And here we are. It's like years down the line, and you guys are still kicking ass.
Check this out, dude. Check this out. And I'll just say this as we go and get Remo back in here. But we were kind of talking about the upcoming year. And Remis at the start of the show was mentioning that March 7th, we've always done a big expanded trade deadline show. That is also going to basically be our 4th anniversary because March 8th is a Saturday. And I think if I'm counting correctly, our 1,000th show is going to be on the 5th of March. So a little teaser. We're going to probably plan on doing some sort of a little party in and around that.
Chills, man. Chills.
And invite all of you. And obviously, you'll be a big part of that. But that first week of March is going to be massive for Winnipeg Sports Talk. Probably our biggest show of the year, the anniversary, show 1000. So stay tuned for that. We're going to make some plans over the course of this month and get working on that.
Last but not least, thank you to the viewers. I keep wanting to say listeners because I'm still stuck in that radio world. But thank you to the viewers.
Listeners too.
Listeners as well. Yeah, the podcasters. That's me too. I'm a big podcaster. I don't know how you crazy animals out there are able to watch live all the time, but I love it. But yeah, thank you to you guys. This has really been a really cool evolution of sports, and just another reminder as we flip the calendar. Thanks so much.
Take it easy. Enjoy the game. There's Jeff Hamilton, Winnipeg Free Press at Jeff K. Hamilton on X, and of course in the pages of the Winnipeg Free Press. All right, listen, we had somebody email us and say, hey, I was planning on coming in to go to the next WST game at the Jets, which is on the 16th of January, Thursday night against the Kraken, and said, but I went to get tickets and they were all sold out. I will tell you, whoever that was that emailed and anyone else that was thinking about getting tickets and coming with us, we're 3-0 on the season, looking to go 4-0 against the Kraken. There are a few tickets in and around there, and I'm hoping that they will be added in. So hang tight. I will have clarity tomorrow for you if we've added more tickets to the section, but I'm optimistic that we will. So we should have at least a few more pairs to squeeze some more people in with us on January 16th. And then the other 2 games, I would suggest try and get them now to avoid being in this situation if we do sell them out. The other 2 games are both Friday night games. They're going to be a lot of fun. The final game before the break is going to be February 7th against the New York Islanders. And then our final WST game of the season against the New Jersey Devils, the Devils' lone visit of the year, Friday, March 28th. So you can count yourself in right now, winnipegjets.com/WST for those 2 games. But hang tight, and I hope to have good news tomorrow that we've got some more tickets that you can jump on and join us on Thursday, January 16th, as we look to go 4-0 as a crew on the season. And at those games, we might all be able to enjoy a Little Brown Jug or 2 together. Of course, Little Brown Jug is available at Craft Beer Corner in Canada Life Center. A big cheers to all of you to the new year from our friends at Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out. learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right. Listen, if you're not at the game tonight, Boston Pizza is always your next best place to be for Winnipeg Jets hockey. Pick a player contest with your chance to win great food and swag from Royal Sports. And, of course, still time to get an entry in for the amazing grand prize trip for two to Boston later on this month to see the Jets and Bruins. And the night before, get a chance to see the world champion Boston Celtics with tickets, airfare, hotel, all courtesy of BP. What's better than that? The game. And like tonight, you've got the Jets. You've got Canada versus Czechia in the World Juniors. The Sugar Bowl as well. So this is a multi-TV night for sure if you're not at the game like we will be. Make it Boston Pizza tonight. And hey, a Happy New Year to our friends at Royal Sports. You know, speaking of Show 1000 and the 4th anniversary coming up, Greg Gerald and the Royal guys have been behind us since show number 1, as has Boston Pizza. And they are the perfect partner for us. It is the best sports store anywhere. And for viewers of our show that love the Winnipeg Jets, the Bombers, their favorite NFL team, other NHL squads, you know that Royal is unlike anywhere you've ever been when you walk in there and see all of the stock and the merchandise and the inventory for sports fans. Of course, also for players as well. The hockey superstore in town as we get to the midpoint of the season. Everything from full equipment, goalie gear, right down to sticks, pucks, and skate sharpening. And so many cool things over on the King's Skate, Snow, and Surf side. You really got to see it for yourself. Pop by in the new year, 750 Pembina Highway. And make sure to check out Royal Sports on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. All right, I did put together a WST parlay. We'll get to that in a minute, but let's get Michael Remis back in here. And Remo, great stuff with the hammer, fun stuff with Dennis. Man, it is crazy, though, just thinking about 2 months from now, show 1000 and our 4th anniversary.
Yeah, great talk with Dennis. I was laughing. You couldn't hear me. I was laughing out loud when you're like, if Shesterkin was doing this, he'd be number 1 in everyone's ballot. And he's like, yeah, that's what happens when you play in New York. And I was laughing here very, very hard. Great talk with Jeff.
Nothing is not honest.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Great talk with Jeff, Jets and Bombers. But yes, looking ahead to March, the trade deadline, and looking back at our top shows from last year, the trade deadline live stream, where we went 4 hours. We actually went longer last year because it was the same day as WST anniversary, opening to pack, trying to get a Connor Bedard rookie. I did get or young gun. I did get a Blackhawks young gun, but it was Kevin Korchinski. So that was the young gun. So I don't know what we'll have planned. We've got some time to figure it out, but I imagine that'll be a very big week here. Show 1000 and the NHL trade deadline. But I imagine the Jets, maybe they'll do a minor move on deadline day. What was the last year? Colin Miller and Toffoli. The big deal was Monahan, which was made before, and that was one of the bigger shows of 2024 as well. So, hey, if Kevin Cheveldaev wants to spread out the trades to a couple different days, not all on the same day, we would appreciate that. So if you're listening, take some notes on how to structure the Jets, because we do get a significant bump whenever there is a major transaction.
Listen, absolutely. And I see we're now at 12.1K subs. We'll make a big push on to keep getting that number up. So if you are with us right now on YouTube, make sure to hit that red subscribe button, or if it's blue, maybe hit the subscribe button, completely free, and toss a thumbs up to the episode while you're at it. And certainly when you're talking Jets, as so many of us do at bar tops or coffee shops or with your friends, let people know about Winnipeg Sports Talk if they haven't. Believe it or not, even approaching 4 years, there still is a person once a month going, oh, you guys are doing that? No way, I'll jump on. So anyways, the more the merrier. You know, it was funny talking to Jeff looking ahead. I mean, this is such an interesting year for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. In a lot of ways, I mean, 2024, it's incredible the Jets won the most games of any team in the National Hockey League over the course of the last calendar year. But obviously, the very disappointing exit from the playoffs sort of tempers that a little bit. And I think everybody knows the challenge for the Winnipeg Jets is, A, to stay on top of the Central Division, which won't be easy, but to be ready to be at their best and to take it to that next level. Because I really do believe, Remis, that if this team can get a taste of it and get things, kind of get grounded in the playoffs with a few wins, I think there's every reason to believe that they will be a very, very difficult team to beat 4 times in 7 games if Connor Hellebuck's at the top of his game and if they play the way they can. We know that didn't happen in the Colorado series, and a lot of people are still wondering why that was. But there's an incredible opportunity to make this a very, very special year. And as we talk about Connor Hellebuck, who is going for a win 300 tonight, I mean, he is a massive favorite to win a 3rd Vezina and a 2nd in back-to-back years. I'm very serious when I say he should, and I think if he continues to play at this level, it'll take a while, but he will be one of the favorites for the Hart Trophy. And we all know the trophy that he wants the most, and it's not an individual award, it is a team award, and that is the Stanley Cup. And good things come in threes. So I'll say this: this could very well be the year of Hellebuck, but he was incredible in 2024. Moving on, speaking of 2024, a couple of other, people that we should mention just coming out of it. I mean, of course, Winnipeg Skylar Park, who won bronze at the Olympics. Our pal Aaron Cockrell, who's always been so nice to us with his time on this program, having that incredible year on the DP World Tour. Really excited to see what's next for Aaron. Another WST favorite, Tyler Mislawchuk, with his viral barf moment after the Olympic triathlon. And then, a few greats that left us. Jennifer Jones retiring. Coach Brian Doby finishing up that incredible run. And then on a really sad note, of course, the passing of Ted Wyman, who we talked about with Jeff, and honestly, maybe I still can't really wrap my head around it, but the loss of Chad Posthumus, who was synonymous with the Sea Bears franchise, suddenly and tragically leaving us, another huge part of the sports stories of 2024 when it comes to Winnipeg and Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Yeah, just looking back at some of the top moments, and you mentioned the Sea Bears. They're going to have a very big 2025 with the championship game for the CEBL here. But their season, sophomore season, Huss, was such a dysfunctional season, cutting the previous year's MVP, Teddy Allen, getting into the playoffs. They seemed to never get a rhythm. In year 1, they had the same roster the whole season. And year 2, it seemed like they had a different lineup every game and very inconsistent. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they bring for this season. Winnipeg Gold Eyes, great year for them. Huss advancing to the championship game. And we had a great night out with the listeners there. The only bad thing was with this new pitch clock and how great their pitching was. It was too short. We were there for like under 2 hours for the game.
I still can't get over that.
It was wild.
I'm pumped for Gold Eyes season. Well, I'll be thinking a lot about Gold Eyes season over the course of the next couple months when we're freezing our ass off through January and February. But man, Logan Watkins, what a season he had, leading this team to the championship final in his first year. And then, speaking of coaches, Reem, I mean, like the retirement of Rick Bowness after that disappointing playoff run, the conversations about who would be the next coach, Scott Arniel getting the job to, some side eyes from people saying it was just because he was there and he knows them, and the job that he has done with this team. I mean, Scott Arniel has to be one of the biggest difference makers when it comes to 2025, along with his new staff. And the fact that we are talking about a power play that is at 32.5% into 2025, 2 games away from the halfway mark of the season, is absolutely incredible. But I mean, the Jets, whether it was the disappointment of the playoffs, the historic start to the season, the coaching change, no shortage of huge stories here in Winnipeg when it comes to the hockey club. And they're giving themselves the opportunity to write a different story come playoff time this year.
Yeah, just like from Jets stories from the year. I mean, the trade for Sean Monahan, big boost. The Rutger McGroarty, dealing with that was pretty big in the trade in the summer. Connor Hellebuck winning the Vezina and Jennings Trophy. It was cool, very cool to be at the awards for us in Vegas when he won the Vezina. Advancing to the playoffs, having the whiteout here, but that first game, the high of that incredible game but then losing 4 straight to Colorado and getting eliminated, a disappointment. But then you have this new season where they had the historic start and they're now in first place on January 2nd of 2025. So it was for Winnipeg Jets, there were many ups and downs, and I think we'll have to see what happens here in the playoffs. And then this last Jets offseason, not a lot happened. Losing Brendan Dillon and elevating Sandberg, signing Colin Miller. The forwards, you lost Monahan to Foley, but you were still a great team without them before those trades. This offseason will be a bit different with new contracts due for Gabe Vilardi and Neil Pionk as a free agent. Last year we had Perfetti, was slight impasse there before they got that settled. Did miss the start of training camp, but there wasn't really a lot of turnover. I imagine, Nikolai Ehlers is the big one for this year as well. So potential for some names to be on the move looking forward. As the last couple of years, there really hadn't been any change on defense. Everyone was locked up and minimal changes on forward. So, looking back at 24 and just looking ahead to what's to come for this season.
As far as the, our kind of the community that we built here, I mean, the work that you and everyone does in the Discord every day is amazing. I went in there immediately after Vilardi scored on New Year's Eve to get the GFL Macarena GIF, which if Vilardi scores tonight, folks, you know what to do, and not just on the Discord, X, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you can, get that thing out there. The Greg Arena, the official GIF of WST when Gabriel Vilardi scores and the Mac Arena is played. But we had some great events. I mean, we had that whiskey tasting night with our friends at Canadian Club at the Manitoba Hall of Sports Hall of Fame. And you mentioned the Gold Eyes night out, which was a heck of a lot of fun. I mean, our Boston Pizza watch party for that Detroit game earlier this year, bringing our winners out to Assiniboia Downs was amazing. And then for us, I mean, the draft was so much fun. To me, that draft at the Sphere is going to stand out. I mean, obviously Vegas being Vegas was great. I guess also the fact that our flights were canceled and I had to stay there essentially an extra 3-day holiday after the first 3 days that we were working was amazing. And obviously going to the Grey Cup every year is so much fun, especially with the Blue Bombers in it, although the last 3 trips have ended in a very, very frustrating fashion. But I do see you at the bottom. You have the social media post of the year.
Yes. Well, I mean, the 2023, the post of the year was you in the produce section in Target.
Oh, in Target, of course.
Reacting
Hellebuck and Scheifele.
Reacting to Hellebuck and Scheifele signing. 2024, it was you in the lazy river in Las Vegas that
free agency update from the MGM Grand after. And you know what the funniest thing is? You mentioned that. Like, just to rewind here, folks, and we'll get to this WST parlay in just a second. But we had gone there. First of all, our travel got screwed up on the way there. We spent the whole day in the airport, had to go back home, and then come back first thing in the morning. But we got there, which crunched the entire week up anymore. We basically got there. We did a show. The next thing you know, we're at the draft. It's the first round. Sleep quickly, come back, rounds 2 through 7. And the Sphere, the visuals and the spectacle of it being at the Sphere is something that I'll never forget. But after that, we finally had some time before leaving the next day to go out. And the two of us, John from The Score, John Mattis,
Yeah.
Some other folks. We all headed down to Fremont. We started off at the Circa. We watched some sports in the massive, unbelievable sports book there, and then sort of cruised through Fremont. And it was just before midnight, and we get the alert that our flights are canceled. And this, of course, is because of the WestJet mechanics thing. Now, it was supposed to be done, but there was still aftermath. I still don't think I ever got a refund on that damn flight. I'm pissed off about that. But the reason I bring this up is that I woke up the next day to Remis doing a bunch of stuff in the room and packing things up. And I said, no, he actually says, hey, good news, I got late checkout. I'm like, oh, right on. What are you doing? He goes, well, I got to get home. Well, how are you doing that? I'm about to rent a car, drive to LA, fly out of LA at midnight, overnight to Chicago, spend 6 or 7 hours in the Chicago airport, and then fly back to Winnipeg. I get home at around 4:30 tomorrow.
Yes.
That was, you want to talk about sacrifice. And I'm sitting here going, I'm like, dude, you are crazy. This is divine intervention. You've just been handed a few extra days in Vegas. There's nothing you can do about it. But no, and that's the dedication of the father that Michael Remis is, and the husband, that he went through all of that to get home. That was the dad move of the year on the show in 2024, leaving me to do lazy river free agency updates from the MGM and get back 3 days later.
Yeah, that was quite a drive. I think I left Fremont and went home, started packing, woke up, finished packing, and got like the only reasonable flight from Vegas from LA to Winnipeg. Yeah, I had to rent a car, drove to LA. It was the hottest drive. It was like 44 degrees. It was so hot there too. And yeah, flew to Chicago and like passed out in the terminal in Chicago listening to Sirius XM free agency updates, and like everyone's like trying to people were waking me up being like, don't you want to get on this flight? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm here for a while.
Here for a bit, folks.
So I had to get back. There was a lot of chaos at home with the kids off. So that was a memorable part of 2024.
With Huss sleeping, Remo was packing. Did I hear that right? Well, first of all, he left. I don't think I even got home that night for, let's just say, till much later. But I knew there was nothing really to get up for, and it hadn't even dawned upon me to drive to LA to come back that day. So anyways, it all worked out well. It was a fun time. I don't know what the story with the draft is this year, just with it being decentralized. We may have to kind of focus on, hopefully our travel budget might be, going to say somewhere later on in the playoffs, shall we say? We won't get ahead of ourselves yet, but we'll make a plan to do something like that. That would be pretty darn fun. And of course, the Grey Cup's here as well. So anyways, that was fun. A great year. Great year was had, and we're looking to a bigger and better 2025 here on WST. But thanks again for everyone's support, all of our sponsors. And cannot wait. That first week of March is going to be wild. Show 1000, the trade deadline, and our 4th anniversary all coming at basically the same time. We'll let you know what we have planned for that. Hey, let's get over to Coolbet. We got a game tonight, and we got a busy night in the National Hockey League. We'll run down these games for you. Detroit's in Seabus taking on the Blue Jackets. Columbus is slight favorite at -115. Florida's -123 favorites home to the Hurricanes. That'll be a great game tonight, starting at 6. Bruins and Rangers, basically a pick'em at MSG. The Wild are in Washington to take on the Caps. What a start the Caps have had in the East. -167 for Washington. Leafs, a slight -112 road favorite on the island against the Islanders. Dallas is at home against Ottawa. Dallas -192. The Jets are now up to -270 favorites. Just south of even money on the puck line. Total on that game is 6. We'll get to that back in a minute. Utah's in Calgary. Calgary, a slight road home dog, actually. +103. I don't want Calgary in that game. Utah -122. Avalanche -200 home to the Sabres. Kraken is slight -120 favorite at home. The Canucks and the Vegas Golden Knights -199 against the Flyers. Tampa, a big -278 favorite against the Sharks. But we figured we finished up 2024 with the winner on the partner parlay. Let's start 2025 with a win on the WST parlay. And I think we're going to like this one tonight.
Oh.
Revenge game for the Jets. Kyle Connor, 2 points, 2 or more points, over 1.5. KFC has multi-point games in his last 3 games at home. Why not make it 4? This is also a huge night for Connor Hellebuyck. When he does things, he does it in style. How about Ducks team total under 1.5? We're not calling the S word. We're giving ourselves a 1-goal wiggle room, but I think this will be a big night for Hellebuyck. He's going to be locked in, coming off a game where he didn't play. So we've got the Ducks under 1.5. And if those come through, we may as well throw in the Jet puck line at Jets -1.5. So we need the Jets to win by 2, Kyle Connor 2 points, Hellebuyck 1 goal or less. Or Ducks, I guess, 1 goal or less, assuming Hellebuyck is in, plus 825. So sign me up for that. If you want to ride, it is in the Coolbet exclusives over on the left margin. And Jake and I did cook up a partner parlay for tonight, trying to make it 2, and we'll finish up 2024 in a win, start 2025 in a win. What do we have here? We've got the Bruins over the Rangers. Rangers are trash right now. As I said, I like Calgary at home against Utah. I don't know why they're a home dog. They've got an unbelievable home record this year. Just going to confirm that. I think they're like 13. There's Calgary at home, 13-4-3. So I have no idea why they're an underdog to a team with a considerably worse record than them. So we're going to go Boston. We're going to go Calgary. And then we just took the Tampa Bay Lightning over San Jose to kind of wrap things up. It's just south. It's boosted to plus 496. So that is right there in the combo cards at the top of Coolbet. There's some other good ones. How about this one? Oh, Canada. Canada to beat the Czechs. Leafs to beat the Islanders. Jets to beat the Ducks. That's boosted to plus 272 if you like that one. And some other options. But partner parlay up in the combo cards. WST parlay up in the Coolbet exclusives. Speaking of that World Junior game, Canada is still a big favorite. And again, this is a tough number to swallow because Canada on paper should not be a 2-goal favorite against the Czechs. Frankly, it might be the other way around. Czechia is plus 255 to win. Czechia plus 1.5 is plus 111. So we could kind of hit the middle. We could win the bet if Canada wins by 1. I don't know, Reem. I'm very nervous about this game. I'm not sure this could be a repeat of last year with Canada bowing out in the quarterfinals. They got to find a way to score some goals, and they got to find a way to stay out of the penalty box.
Yes, well said. Score goals, stay out of the box. Seems just when you look at the way the tournament has gone, plus 255 is some really nice value. But you said, hey, do an emotional hedge and do Czechia plus 1.5. I am curious to see. I'll be flipping back and forth, having one on I use a tablet as my second screen, so one on a tablet, one on the TV. So big night, a lot of NHL games. You can watch the Coast to Coast on Prime. If you got multiple TVs, they'll be flipping to all of them. Big night for fantasy, as well. So, but this World Juniors will be focused on that. Can Canada avoid major disappointment? We'll be here, us asking a lot of the big questions tomorrow if they do get bounced, and that would be sad. Tournaments at home in Ottawa, been great crowds. Not have Canada get past the quarterfinal. It's a big L, and more pressure for next season. So we will see.
Could very well be. Hey, by the way, hockeymanitoba.myshopify.com if you want to get 50-50 tickets for the final draw that's going to be pulled on the weekend on the 5th of June, or January, I should say. We're far from June right now. And you can get your tickets there at hockeymanitoba.myshopify.com before that final draw. And as I mentioned a little earlier, I'll hopefully have an update for you tomorrow, and hopefully have some good news that we've added more seats to our WST section for January 16th against the Seattle Kraken. We'll confirm that and let you know tomorrow on the program. Great stuff today. First show of the year. The chat was hot. Hammer was great. Always fun having Dennis Bernstein on the show. Tomorrow we'll recap tonight's game against the Ducks and look ahead to the Wings coming to town with their new head coach, Todd McClellan, for tomorrow's episode. Also get ready for the final week in the National Football League. And obviously hit what's up with the, probably more so in the lock shop, talk about this college game tonight, Sugar Bowl, which was, of course, postponed after that horrible New Year's Eve tragedy in New Orleans. But it'll be a busy show tomorrow. It feels like a Monday today, but tomorrow is in fact Friday, which means it's a Thursday night. We're pretty much almost at the weekend. Go out, enjoy yourselves tonight, and maybe we'll see you at the game. If not, we'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk tomorrow. Huge thanks to all the sponsors that make this show happen every day, all you podcast listeners, and everyone joining us on YouTube. Have a great night, and join us tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.